And hello, everyone. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Man, I should have taken a comb to my hair, although my hair has not seen a comb in a long, long time, but you know what I mean. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football as we get started on week 3 across the country. And I do apologize, although the scheduling of this show is technically 10 p.m. Eastern Time or post-game. So as we stated from the beginning of the season, we're going to come on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Then when we've got games, which would be Wednesday or Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Sorry, Maction, we don't respect you. We're not counting your games. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday games that we would come on at 10 p.m. Eastern Time if it was not a compelling matchup or a close game. But if it was, that we would wait till post game. I guess we did something in between. And we appreciate you being here, the Voice of College Football. Please leave those comments and questions there in the chat. And I have also left the call-in line. So thank you so much for being here. Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, the most effective ways to contribute to the Voice of College Football. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. And again, 10 p.m. Eastern Time or post-game. The intention tonight was 10 p.m. Eastern Time, but it's been 2 consecutive nights that I've received extremely important phone calls. So my apologies to a certain extent. All right, let's get to the college football that is tonight. And I will try to focus on college football for the next hour plus. I'll be here for an hour for sure. I could be here for longer depending on your desire to want me to be here more. So second hour, following hours, I'll be here till, I don't know. I will stay as long as noon Eastern Time on Saturday. We could lead this into the kickoffs of noon Eastern Time. I am willing to do that. Nothing more than that. No watch party at noon Eastern tomorrow. But I will be here. From now, we can do a 13-hour live stream if you so choose. If you so choose, how many people would like a 13-hour live stream? I would kind of like one, maybe not necessarily. I'll admit I took a nap this afternoon, but that's because I slept like 3 hours the night before. I was binge watching. Many of you could probably guess what I was binge watching. So normally I'd all be on top of the Kansas State-Arizona game tonight. And we will check out that score in Houston taking on Colorado. All over that game as well. But can't say that I saw too much of either. Basically, I saw nothing. Saw a little Houston, Colorado. Checked in long enough to hear Andre Ware, of course, the great 1989 Heisman Trophy winner from Houston, let us know that this is a different Colorado offense this year, and 3rd and 12 was no problem for him last year. And I thought, I get your point, Shadur Sanders, Travis Hunter. I get your point that 3rd and 12 seemed like, oh, well, we got playmakers. We got 2 of the best players in the country. 3rd and 12 was no issue for Colorado last year. But I'm guessing if I look at the stats, we're going to see otherwise. So I did. Colorado 64th in the country in 3rd down conversions. Now, we don't know about 3rd and 12, but if they can only convert 40% on any 3rd downs, I guarantee 3rd and 12 and more, 10% maybe. The guy that was the 3rd-string quarterback actually at the beginning of the season for Colorado started tonight, Rusty Staub. And they were down 33-14 last I saw. Leanne Herring, our friend, is covering the game for whoever she covers the game for. She's got all sorts of outlets. I don't know what the connection to the Big 12 is because she writes for a Kentucky outlet and Saturday Down South, and there must be a Big 12 connection there somewhere. So appreciate you being here. We'll get to the comments, questions there in the chat. And we'll go to the scoreboard as well. Let's get to the comments first. And again, the call-in line is there available. We're going to go through week 3. And just so you know, for those of you that get my predictions, 24-14 against the spread. And you get Steve Dace's predictions. You get the real MVPs in the studio. I just got a little notification right there. That must be a new feature on StreamYard. Anyway, Steve Dace's 12-pack of predictions, Corey Bratta's 12-pack of predictions, which I think I got to bug him for because I have not received them. Corey Bratta, shame on you. Get your 12-pack of predictions in. But I got Steve Dace's, I got Matt Zemek's, and then you get about 25 predictions from me. Again, 24-14 against the spreads. Pretty excellent. We'll try to keep that going this week. Steve Merrill, his under the radar selection as well. Steve is 1-1. That won't get it done, but obviously it's only 2 weeks. So 1-1. We'll take 60% from Steve as well. That would be good. All right, let's get to the scoreboard. After your comments, Tukey G, good to see you leading us off. We've got Karen. Thank you so much for your fine contributions. Karen has been especially gracious this week. I must have done something nice. But Karen, thank you so much. And you look exceptional, radiant in your Voice of College Football, like a camo style hat there. I like that. That's a good look. Justin's here. Thank you for that. Good evening to you, sir. Tukey G. We need an intro that plays at a 5-minute countdown. We got a 30-second countdown, but I can't stand the thing. I play sometimes at the end. Hate the music. I'm sure that could be changed. 5-minute countdown. Gotcha, Tukey G. I guess so. But that means I would have to show up after 5 minutes. So I rarely want to limit myself there. We've got Dominic showing up. Hey, Mark, just got done watching the NASCAR Infinity Series race. I didn't even know NASCAR still existed. Anyway, at Bristol, Tennessee, of course. Can anyone in the chat name the college football game in the last 5 years that was played at Bristol Speedway? You get a gold star if you correctly get that one. Bristol Speedway, college football game in the last, I'd say, I would guess this was in 2019, would be my guess. Yes, Joshua, thank you for that. And if you looked at the title of tonight's live stream, of course, we're previewing week 3, all about college football. Just thought I would add this in, and you can either take a sports standpoint or just an overall celebrity standpoint. Because my response to Charlie Kirk's death didn't take me by surprise, because he was my favorite and will continue to be, I guess, my favorite commentator. You know, I've gone through my Candace Owens phase, my Tucker Carlson phase. I've gone through different people that, like, for a few months, they were my favorite. But I would say overall, the last 5 years or so, he'd be my favorite. And so, yeah, been sharing a lot with my kids and with friends and talking. And man, I had a long conversation with my son last night and his wife and various friends. And I've just been binge watching. Did not see myself doing this, but I've been binge watching. It's going to be tough watching college football tomorrow to a certain extent. I'll probably have I can think of like 3 more podcasts I want to watch. But I will do my due diligence watching college football tomorrow. But then it got me to thinking, I made this post on X. Okay, this is the most impactful for me, not for you necessarily, most impactful celebrity. I'm sure Charlie would not consider himself a celebrity. I think of actors and musicians for this acclaim, but that's the that's one term you could throw there. So I'll ask the chat whether you want to keep this in a sports realm or you want to keep this in a overall celebrity realm. The most impactful celebrity death for you. Just curious to see some names. So this for me, the most impactful since 1977. So I was 9 years old in 1977, and that by far was the most. Since then, I really can't think of any. Tom Landry. But it helped that he was 75 and no longer the coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Tom Landry, that hit me. That I was saddened by that because he's my favorite of all time. Named my son after him. Any musicians, any actors? Like, I love the Andy Griffith Show, but, you know, when Andy Griffith dies and he's like 85 years old, you know, it's sad when anyone passes away, but I can't think of anyone passing away. I know a lot of people took the Robin Williams passing hard. We can name all sorts of people because who's important to you is unique to you. This one by far. And then I said that to my son, and my son said, well, for me in my lifetime, said, this is the most devastating. He said, I can't even think of anybody else. There's not a second. So I'll be interested to see. Again, you can keep it the sports route, or we can go across the board since we are naming that. Austin, thank you for that. Yes, that, oh my goodness. If you did not see Erica Kirk's address tonight, that is like the most touching, beautiful, and powerful tribute and pitch of the gospel that I have seen. I don't know how she did it either. I could barely watch it. So thank you so much for the comments. We'll get to college football. I am curious about the celebrity comments. And again, can keep it in the sports realm or otherwise. Yeah, the Buffs getting kicked around in Houston. I think let's make this a little bit more about Houston. Think about this. I pegged them as one of my +3s this year. 4-8 last year. Could they get to 7-5? Well, they're 3-0 now. John thinks this was a football show. John, hate to tell you this, but I kind of do whatever I want. It's my channel, but I do have respect for everyone watching. This is the voice for college football. And believe me, over the years, I have dumped, even though I have made it very well known here that I don't watch anybody's college football show, and I don't, and that's no disrespect to them. That doesn't mean that other people don't do excellent college football shows. They probably do. I just don't have any interest in watching anyone else. But I'll shut down here every night, and then I can see, oh, he's on, and I may click it for 10, 20 seconds. Oh, my word. I hear all sorts of stuff being talked about that are not college football related topics. And we're here like in the middle of May talking nonstop college football. So believe me, I make no apologies for anything that I state outside the realm of college football, unless, it's the national champion. Shoot, the night of the national championship game, I was on here for like 2 hours talking about the national championship game, taking calls. And then somebody got me started on something else, and it didn't seem like anybody cared about the national championship game anymore. And I'd say we stayed on another 2 hours talking about music, and I didn't lose any viewers. I gained viewers. So, that's just what it is. Justin Kane, go Dogs. Georgia's got Tennessee tomorrow. That's the game that I will be watching at 3:30 for sure, first and foremost. Indiana. I will say something about Indiana. Voice of college tennis. David, thank you so much. Appreciate you dropping by, and thank you so much for the contribution. That is kind of you, sir. Let's do it, brother. All right. Anything else in the chat? David's a legend. Karen, Austin, Yes, we'll give. I did not think of that. And I have no idea why Charlie Kirk is such an Oregon fan, but he is. He's from Chicago. He's a Cubs fan, but I guess we'll do that. How about we do that? There you go. How about we just we'll do this. How about that? There we go. Oregon Ducks. Who do they have tomorrow? Nobody of consequence. Oh, Northwestern. Big Ten opener. And another super chat, and then we will get to, I want to hear these anybody on celebrities? Guess nobody's taking my Kobe. All right, Colin says, Kobe hit hard, but it was an accident. This was just evil. Yeah, I know. Obviously, Kobe Bryant had zillions of fans. Anybody else on? Yeah, Kai's World of Sports, Kobe Bryant. How long has that been? 2000. I'll take a guess. 13 would be my guess. The real MVP, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I sent my buddy Steve Dace a text just to say, and again, I understand not everyone's a fan, so I'll be neutral in that respect. But a lot of people are hurting, including myself. But yeah, Steve Dace was a personal friend, and he actually said on his podcast that he was going to be joining this tour at some point. Adam, thank you so much for stopping by. Adam says, academy. Oh, I was going to say academics. I was not focused in here. Academia is dominated by far-left professors who create an atmosphere where diverse views are unwelcome. Erica Kirk's speech was so moving and sad. Drew Aller should have watched it instead of throwing interceptions. Way to keep it balanced there, Adam. I like the poignancy, the in the moment, the solemn nature of the beginning, and then you come in with the levity. That's good. That is good. Drew Aller, be clutch this year. Be clutch, Drew Aller. If Penn State had a real schedule, maybe we would know something about Drew Aller. Maybe we would know something about Penn State at this point. No, if we actually had powers that be that forced these teams to schedule or scheduled for them. That's what should be done. Schedule for the teams. All right. Okay. I want to make sure, since I asked this question. Doc says JFK, but I was -5. Okay. Well, but okay, that's fine, because I do know that there are people that mourn the loss of people who have passed before they were born, just because they enjoy their work and they enjoy their work, their art, or whatever it may be. So I get it. Michael and the real MVP said that Kobe Bryant just passed away 5 years ago. That was in 2020. It seems like it was forever ago. I guess 2013. Wow. All right. Speaking of Michael, he's on the line. Michael, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. Good evening, sir. How you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing just fine. How are you?
First of all, my condolences to Charlie's family and stuff. But one thing that irked me is shortly after that happened, there was that school shooting in Colorado. It's like, why is everybody putting that off, man? There was people like blowing that out, like I don't know. It just irked me, man. Like, yeah, it happened on a college campus, but why was nobody saying anything about the high school kids who was shot like a little bit after that and stuff like that?
Okay, so I have to ask, and I'm not disagreeing with you in any way. When you say nobody was talking about it, obviously somebody was talking about it, or you wouldn't know anything about it.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean, like, people say.
How did you find out about it?
Oh, I found out about the news, but I'm talking about people like they were saying about Charlie Kirk, but I'm talking about people who wouldn't even pay attention to there's another school shooting again, and in the high school at the same a little bit later.
People have the freedom to talk about whatever they want to.
That is true. Anyway, all right.
No, I'm
That's
not. I'm not saying everyone's life has the same equal value.
Mm,
Absolutely.
sure. All right. I'm off my soapbox for that. I want to talk football. Is Georgia in trouble tomorrow? From what I've read about college game day being in Tennessee, because weren't they in Tennessee the last time that happened in 2016?
Well, if you've listened to me comment about game day, I'm the last person in the world that you should ask about keeping track of college game day. I have no idea.
Okay.
Although in 2016, no, not 2016. Anyway, the guy that runs the audio for college game day actually reported to me the last 2 years I was at ESPN, but that wouldn't have been 2016. Anyway, and then I did pay attention to where they were every week. And I actually got a few invites to college game day and didn't go. Anyway, was that the Hail Mary to
Yeah.
somebody help me out? Was that
Oh.
Cedric? Jawan Jennings, right? Jawan Jennings, anyone?
Yep.
Okay, Jawan Jennings from the Tennessee quarterback that went to the Pittsburgh Steelers, Josh Dobbs.
Yep.
Probably. Yeah, that would have been the last time that Tennessee beat Georgia. Tennessee's got a good shot in this game. Georgia scored 28 points against Austin Peay last week. I don't think that that's alarming, but
yeah,
it's kind of odd that they only could muster that much.
Sure.
They're a 3.5 to 4 point favorite on the road. So Vegas still thinks that Georgia's a touchdown better team.
Yeah. That. Oh, and the Bristol Motor Speedway was Virginia Tech and Tennessee.
Yes, absolutely. Tennessee won that game. Tennessee, Virginia Tech. Yes, Bristol Motor Speedway. I think it was an ABC Saturday night game. And
Yes,
if anyone could give me the year on that, I was guessing 2019.
I believe you were right, sir.
Okay. All right. Good job, Michael.
But no, because they did the baseball game there with the Braves and your Cincinnati Reds this year, but that got rained out, so they had to play it the next day. Oh, no, wait a minute. You're not a Red fan. You're a Guardians fan, aren't you?
Well, I'm a nothing fan now, but yes, I was an Indians fan.
Okay.
I was a bigger Indians fan than probably any team I've ever rooted for.
Okay, fair enough.
It like gives me chills when I think back on my Cleveland Indians fandom.
Okay. Just wondering.
Love the Tribe.
Yeah. They're playing some good baseball right now, too.
Well, I loved the Tribe. Yeah, I have no idea what they're doing.
Actually, they're fighting with Detroit for the playoffs to win the division, I think so.
Although I got to admit, I did get into the series against the Yankees last year. That's the first baseball I watched all last year.
Yeah. Not bad. But no, I was going to say, I just want to get your take about the primetime game tomorrow night there at Death Valley. LSU in Florida.
Sure. Well, Florida's obviously coming off a difficult loss, and their offense in that game, and I watched quite a bit of that game. I saw second quarter on to the end. Mm-hmm. Florida's got some offensive issues. They ran the ball reasonably well. DJ Lagway had a decent completion percentage, but they couldn't bust open any big plays. They didn't convert on third down. Their offensive line didn't look great. The Florida offense, based on that performance, is struggling. The defense played well, but they imploded when the game was on the line. They played a really good game outside of a 65-yard touchdown play that they gave up and only gave up one touchdown. But then the last drive of the game, they give up 90 yards to lose the game. Mm-hmm. So, LSU's playing better, but this is one of those deals where if you believe in Florida bouncing back and getting mad about what happened last week, and if Billy Napier's decent at his job, then he should be able to galvanize his team to come back and fight back. So you believe in the bounce back theory, or or not. That
Yeah.
LSU's better. They're at home.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. That was trap game. My second game, I'm gonna give you three others. And I know Alabama and Wisconsin probably not a trap game, or could it be a trap game tomorrow?
Wisconsin, Alabama, because Alabama's got Georgia the next week.
Yeah.
It could be. I think if Alabama had not lost to Florida State, your point would be better taken just because it would be more of a true trap game. But I think that they've got the attention of some people out there, or their own attention, to apply themselves. We got word tonight that Billy Edwards definitely is not starting, and it will be Danny O'Neal for Wisconsin, their backup quarterback.
Yep. And then game number 3 is Clemson and Georgia Tech.
One last note on the Alabama-Wisconsin game. I just think it's going to be difficult for Wisconsin to score in this game. You know, I could see it still being a fairly competitive game, but I could see 24-10, something like that. Georgia Tech at Clemson. Yeah. I'm going to be making a pick on that one later tonight. Okay. And Clemson is only a 2.5 point, 3-point favorite at Georgia Tech. And Haynes King, obviously, won the game at Colorado a few weeks ago. Clemson didn't look good last week. Are they a good team? Well, they've had 2 chances to show us, and they're not showing us yet how good they are. They have so much returning production. And what really surprises me is with 3 excellent wide receivers back and Cade Klubnik, that their passing game should be clicking, and it's not.
Nope. All right. My last one, and this is near and dear to my heart because I won't be going to the game tomorrow. Purdue, USC. I don't think Purdue's going to win, but I don't think they're going to get smoked either. I think it could be maybe like a 34-20, 31-17 type game tomorrow.
Did you just say you're going to the game?
Yes.
Nice. Have a good time.
I will.
Yeah, I would tend to lean that Purdue can keep it close enough within 3 touchdowns of the spread. But and Purdue certainly took care of business the first 2 weeks. It took them a while last week.
Yeah.
But USC really kicked into gear their offense against bad opponents, but still.
Yeah. I just want to see, because I know I'm kind of licking my chops to see how much pressure the front four for Purdue can get on, what is it, Mavia?
Yes.
And I don't know what he's like and stuff like that, but they haven't played and stuff like that. So, all right. That's all my time. And I definitely can't wait till next Friday night because I'm going down to Bloomington for the Illinois next Saturday night. I won't be able to go down to the Illinois IU game.
You're getting around.
Yeah. I just had a couple of people I know who cashing in some favors.
Nice. Good for you. Well, enjoy the game tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk some Indiana, Illinois next week.
All right. Sounds good. All right, Mark. I am going to try to team you in sometime this weekend because there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about.
All right, Michael.
All right.
Thank
take
you.
care.
Have a good night. All right. Let's keep it rolling to real MVPs on the line.
Hey, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's been a tough week with everything going on, but
absolutely.
It's out of our control and it's in other people's control and more divine control than we can possibly imagine. So we'll just keep moving on because that's all we can do right now.
Good point.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. Let's get to some games going on right now. Nico Amalivu is currently losing to New Mexico.
Oh boy. Let me pull up the scoreboard.
Yeah, it's 14-7. New Mexico's got the ball. It just hit the 2-minute warning. Mark, if they lose to New Mexico,
good Lord, yeah.
Is there any way to salvage this for Nico? Like, are we talking he's not even going to get drafted? Like, how far could this fall for him?
Well, you're taking it on from a Nico perspective. I thought.
Well, that's the only perspective people care about. Nobody cares about UCLA. Look at the stadium.
Well, I kind of do. In a strange way, but I kind of care about everyone. Yeah, I'm thinking more about your Stanford prediction making its way to Southern California for UCLA if they lose this one.
That's true. 0-12 watch is very much alive and
Oh,
well.
my goodness gracious. Well, New Mexico did play a pretty decent game at Michigan last week, or in week 1.
That is true. I thought that was more telling of Michigan's defense not being so good, but maybe
Sure.
it's New Mexico's better than we expected.
No, I agree with you, but still, it's Michigan. It's still a top 20 team.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, their weakest opponent is probably Maryland. That's probably their most winnable game. I mean, they'll probably be underdogs in that if this is anything to go by, but they got a plenty of 60-40 games. I mean, they play Washington, Michigan State. So I don't think they're, because my problem with Stanford is they're just uncompetitive, it feels like. Whereas
Sure.
UCLA is at least putting up a fight in these games. So I do think Stanford is worse. I want to ask you also about Kansas State. They scored an iffy touchdown to tie it up where the announcers and replay official thought it shouldn't have been a touchdown. But if Kansas State loses this game and goes to 1-3 mark, is there a potential for the wheels just to completely fall off the Kansas State? Because not only are they 1-3, but they're 0-2 in Big 12 play, and it's going to be almost impossible to come back from that hole to make it to the playoffs or to your conference title.
I'm going to make a slight amendment to your statement because everything you said is very reasonable. This is one of these odd situations where this is not a Big 12 conference game.
Oh, really? Okay.
This is one of these added. So they did the same thing last year. They were already scheduled to play. And so this is just an out of conference game for both teams.
Fair enough. I know we need to stop this, by the way. I know Wake Forest and NC State was the same. We have so few data points across the country to compare conferences and to compare strength of schedules. I mean, come on. You're playing teams within your own conference as non-conference game. It's limiting the data points even further.
I agree with you from that vantage point, and I do find it more interesting when two teams get together. Not that we've seen a litany and a legacy history of Kansas State and Arizona football, but of course, going forward, they're going to be in the same conference. And the matchup you just mentioned, this has been done several times. The ACC was the first one to take off on this. You know, North Carolina and Wake, and now NC State and Wake, and so forth and so on. So I agree with you from the standpoint that we could pick out all sorts of teams across the country that we've not seen Kansas State ever play. So why can't they play somebody else? It would be just more interesting. But on the other hand, not so much in this case because there's little connection between Kansas State and Arizona. But since these conferences have enlarged so much, to see NC State and Wake play when they should be playing, they've been ACC rivals for a long, long time. So I see both sides of it.
Right. But to me, that's a scheduling issue within the ACC.
Yeah, this is just a confusing situation because most people are going to look at it, come to this conclusion. However, to your bit broader point, it's more about Kansas State, whether it's a conference game or not, losing to what is most definitely not going to be a great Arizona team. What's this team going to go 5-7 this year? Kansas State is one of those teams and one of those programs that when you hit me with, are the wheels going to come off? Well, I never think about Kansas State being a candidate as the wheels coming off. It's almost like set in stone that they're going to go 8-4 every year, if not a little bit better. It just never seems to happen. They seem to be rock solid, but they have not performed well at all. Their 3-point loss against Iowa State was a decent effort, but it wasn't as close as the final score. And then who knows what happened against the FCS team. I didn't watch that game, but obviously they barely escaped. And now we're looking at this.
Right. And I want to get to some other games this week that I think could tell the larger story of college football. If Clemson, Mark, they're only 3.5, 2.5 favorites, depending on where you look. If they lose to Georgia Tech, which is seeming like a real possibility, that's another, what do we think about Dabo? Is Clemson's run of being this national championship contender officially over? do we need to change Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator? Because this is his season, and that off. If they lose to this game and start 1-2, especially if their offense is bad, there's going to have to be something that changes for Clemson, in my opinion.
So I'll start with the more recent two-part question of the offensive coordinator situation. There was a lot of speculation and a lot of talk concerning Garrett Riley's role in the TCU run and how much of that was Sonny Dykes, because anytime you've got an offensive-minded head coach who has just been scheming plays and is Lincoln Riley, is Ryan Day, is fill in the blank, Mike Norvell, you have to wonder how much of this is due to the offensive coordinator. So but obviously Dabo Swinney was convinced that Garrett Riley really had a lot to do with that. Then he brings him in, and he's been there for a few years. And for as much as Clemson was meh last year, if you really look at the nuts and bolts, and I know that you know exactly what I'm talking about, they were not a playoff team, that their passing attack did advance last year. They held up with a mediocre rushing attack, and Klubnik and those three receivers really made it happen for them. Just anybody watch the Texas game from the playoffs last year. But through 2 games, they scored 10 points at home against LSU, got shut out in the second half, scoring 27 points against Troy. We're supposed to celebrate that. So they've looked awful. And so Dabo Swinney knows more about the nuts and bolts of his operation and what Garrett Riley is contributing. Part of it does seem to be a recruiting issue with not having depth at running back. And they thought they had a good offensive line this year, and they were terrible against LSU. So this leads into the broader question that you're bringing to the table. And for me, if Clemson loses to Georgia Tech, they're not elite. Even if they beat Georgia Tech, we'll just carry that conversation on, I guess, to the next week. I'm not writing off their season because of where they play, but they could be headed toward the same type result as last year of licking their wounds, fixing what they need to fix to be just good enough in the ACC to get to a conference championship game. And then let's all be honest. Was anyone impressed with their conference championship game appearance against SMU? And they're playing SMU, and they won on a 56-yard field goal at the gun. And I know that was a feel-good moment, and Dabo was all elated that, oh, we made the playoffs. We somehow made it. We don't deserve to be there, but we made it. And then we see them get kicked around, and we see SMU get kicked around. This is a far cry of a program from what we saw 8 to 10 years ago.
Right, and the only thing I'll add to that is I think Cade Klubnik has regressed from last year to this year, even considering all the other factors you've talked about. The LSU game, I'll give him some leeway for, even though he shouldn't really have that leeway. But against Troy, he looked awful against Troy for that first half, and that's just unacceptable for this late in his career. And this is a guy people were picking to win the Heisman Trophy, and he looks more like not even a top 25 quarterback right now. He just looks like your average Joe playing quarterback in college football than Heisman Trophy winner.
Yeah. Adam might tell you that he looks like Drew Aller.
Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, Drew Aller struggled against FIU as much as Clemson struggled against Troy. So maybe they do have a lot of similarities. Another game, Mark, I want to go to, and this game has got my eye because it's just beautiful for college football, is Vanderbilt, Mark. I'm not sure if you've been keeping track of this line all week. It just keeps coming down. It was 5.5 earlier this week.
Yep.
I'm seeing it around 3, 2.5, 3.5. Do you think this is public? Just oh, it's Vanderbilt and we like the underdog and Vanderbilt's known as the underdog. Do you think it's people actually believing in Vanderbilt being able to be better than South Carolina? Why do you think it's moving down so much?
It's funny you bring that up because I looked at the Ohio State. I also had my eye on the line you're talking about from South Carolina Vandy, but Ohio State and the Ohio U Bobcats, which I missed my opportunity for a tweet I wanted to send out this week to get after those Michigan fans, because I don't know what they're calling this game this week between Ohio and Ohio. Doesn't make any sense. But anyway, back to South Carolina and Vandy, because our buddy Steve Merrill from Wager Talk schools me on this from time to time in terms of the moving line. And he, with all due respect, college football fans, doesn't have a whole lot of respect for the money that comes in from the public, because the public's usually wrong, doesn't know what it's doing, reacts way too heavily to what just happened the week before, reacts way too heavily to what they want to have happen, who they're rooting for. So I don't know what that does tell us here, but based on Steve Merrill's analysis for me on a regular basis, this may be telling us that South Carolina is actually better. And I don't know. It's more the movement, I guess, earlier in the week that tells us what the sharp money's telling us. I don't know. But yeah, I'm intrigued by that. Who's got that game on tomorrow?
The SEC network.
Okay. There's some disrespect for those two. But yeah, I depending on who else is going, and we'll look at the TV schedule a little bit later, I would love to see that game.
I would too. It's one of my favorite games of the week. It's most pure college football is that game. Two brands nobody cares about, two good teams.
Love it.
It's going to be sloppy at times. You're going to see some amazing plays because you got two dynamic running quarterbacks.
Well, there's certainly no reason to watch any Big Ten games tomorrow. So
yeah, they're taking the week off. They're on the SEC plan.
This is the stupidity of these conferences in college football. Big Ten, why would you take yourself completely off the map tomorrow? Dumb.
Yeah, I think the Pac-12 did something basically a few years ago, and their conferences died. It's not a good strategy for the long-term health of your conference. Another game I want to go to, nobody's talking about, but it's going to have massive implications on the college football playoff, is Duke-Tulane, Mark. If Tulane beats Duke and South Florida loses to Miami, let's say 34-20, which team right now would you have as the G5 playoff contender?
Just based on the current results?
Correct. Is it South Florida or Tulane?
South Florida.
Okay, so that's surprising to me because Tulane would have been two Power 5 opponents. They have a proven quarterback that can compete at a high level within the P4, whereas South Florida is giving me Paper Tiger vibes.
Okay, I see it differently. Okay. Having not watched Tulane play at all, but knowing their recent history, I do believe in their coach. I think they're well coached. And the BYU quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, is the starter, not Brendan Sullivan from Iowa. Yeah, I think he might be nicked up a little bit. Because I was intrigued about that quarterback battle going into the season. That, to me, just based on resume, let's keep in mind that although Tulane beat Northwestern by 20 points, we know nothing about Northwestern right now, except they're not as good as a G5 team. So Northwestern's probably pretty bad. And then they slipped by South Alabama by 2 points, something like that, the next week. And okay, the Duke win, good win for a G5 against a mid-level ACC, but obviously Duke had some luster taken off them by getting trounced by Illinois in the second half by 4 touchdowns last week. Whereas for South Florida, for me, if you're throwing a 34-20 game, and let's say it's a true 34-20 game, like it's competitive, it's worth watching, they can't really ever quite get there, and it's not a blowout that just turns out 34-20, and it's also not a close game that turns out 34-20. They played against the number 5 team in the country on the road, and they notched this win against Boise State by 4 touchdowns, and they beat Florida. That's a much better resume to me.
got you. The final game I wanted to ask you about is the Notre Dame Texas A&M game. If Notre Dame, is this the most important week 2 game for this playoff expansion? Because Notre Dame doesn't have a conference championship game. This is by far the second best opponent they're going to play all year unless something crazy happens. So to me, this is the most important game for a particular team I can remember in a long time, this early on in the season.
Yeah, that take makes total sense. I'd have to think of some various ins and outs elsewhere, but generally, yes. Minus a conference championship, having lost to Miami. Yeah, Notre Dame's a near touchdown favorite at home against Texas A&M. And if they lose this game, go 10-2, best win, probably USC. And then a second win to put along with that, Pitt, Boise State, nothing of significance. So, yeah, your 10-2 Notre Dame scenario that I think you've brought to the table in the past and out of the playoffs could be in play.
Yeah, I would include Arkansas on that list if Arkansas goes
Yes.
7-5 or 8-4.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And that was the game that I picked Notre Dame to lose in the offseason.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Notre Dame loses another one. Like, I have no idea how good Notre Dame is. And this early bye kind of worries me as well. I just don't like teams having this bye early on into the season. Feels like it's a key momentum breaker for no reason.
Yeah, I got you. Anything else to reel?
No, that's all I wanted to get to talk to you about. Have a great day watching college football tomorrow.
Yes, you as well, buddy. The real MVP, bringing it as he always does. Great caller. Always appreciate the real MVP and appreciate all of you here at the Voice for College Football. Minnie's showing up, even though she's got a soccer game to go to. How about that? Minnie doesn't like when I pick on the Huskers, so I will not pick on soccer as well. I have many rants in my past here on this channel. I don't know where they would be, where you would find them. They're not like labeled Mark Soccer Rant, but they're within live streams, of course, of people bringing up soccer or there being some kind of soccer reference and me completely blasting soccer as a complete waste of time. However, if your children are playing soccer, and it's certainly a great form of exercise, then, hey, my kids played soccer for 1 year, and I certainly had little to do with it. You know, I took them to the games and everything, but I don't remember how that whole scenario played out that I was involved in signing off on that. But then it was quickly to t-ball, baseball, for my daughter, softball. That was the rest of the sports careers, and for my son, football in high school. All right. So real quick before we take this next call, again, if you want me around for another hour, you know what to do. Otherwise, I will see you with instant analysis after the games. So I'll take this call in just a second. Let's get to the scoreboard, though. So again, we've got, do I need to refresh this? Possibly. Whoop. 4 minutes left in the third quarter. Kansas State in a battle at Arizona 17-7. So I've really missed the action tonight across the board. I've not watched any of this except a very little bit of maybe 10 plays of Houston, Colorado. But these games are starting to intrigue me now. So when we get off here, unless you guys keep me here all night, which again, that's an option, that I'm going to go watch these games. And if nothing else, if we stay on late, then I'm going to watch the 12 to 15 minute breakdown. What did I watch? I watched NC State and Wake's 15-minute highlight package last night. Oh, I know what I watched today or yesterday that I was entertained by. I had to catch up with Michigan State, Boston College. Actually, I was looking forward to that game the entire offseason. I thought they played a really good game last year, anticipated a really good game, and for whatever reason, let's see, we had Michigan, Oklahoma, and we had another game I was watching, the other primetime game. So that kept me from watching Michigan State and BC. So I went back and I watched like the 20-minute highlight of that. It seemed like a really good game. 42-40 in overtime. All right, 2 tonight, 3 minutes left in the third. Kansas State, Arizona tied at 17. New Mexico leads at UCLA at the Rose Bowl, 14-7. I can imagine the scene at the Rose Bowl. Crickets. Why are we here? It's on the Big Ten Network. A final. I can hear Indiana fans just reveling in this victory of how great their football team is. We don't know if you're any good because you don't play anyone. It's annoying. Play somebody. I'm going to look up the name of the Indiana University athletic director and let him have it. Play somebody. Be a real school. Be a real team. Play somebody. It's pathetic. It's just, who cares? Indiana won 73-0. Does it matter if it's 73-0, 33-0? It doesn't matter. It's so, who would go to this stupid game? It's just so ridiculous. All right. Syracuse against Colgate, 66-24. There's some history there. And also Syracuse actually plays some teams with a pulse outside the conference, like Tennessee. And then Houston with a big win tonight. And again, we talked about Houston early in the show, going to 3-0. 4-8 last year. I picked them 7-5. They look like they're on their way. First win in the Big 12. Maybe Houston's going to be a dark horse to vie in the Big 12. Connor Wigman, the former Texas A&M quarterback, with a big night for the Cougs at 222 yards, 83 rushing, 2 touchdowns. Dion is a 1-2, but they're better than Delaware. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got Rob on the line.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
Good. How you doing?
I'm all right. I got a little cold going on, but other than that, I'm doing good. So you were asking earlier. Yeah, when I said I came back from vacation and somebody got me sick up here. So yay. Anyway, so you were asking about celebrities, celebrity passings that were impactful. Obviously the reason I think that me and a lot of people like yourself, pick Charlie is probably the most impactful, is because he was assassinated. And I unfortunately my boss sent me that video and I watched it, and it was it's one of the most horrific things I've ever seen. And I wish I hadn't watched it, but
I haven't seen it. I don't want to see it.
Don't watch it. Yeah, don't. But for me, aside from that, I would say Robin Williams was probably the next biggest one, because, as a kid, I used to love Robin Williams movies. Yeah. And even as an adult, he was an amazing actor. Good Will Hunting was maybe one of the best acting performances of anyone I've ever seen, period.
Yeah.
And then as far as other celebrities, I would say like Chris Cornell. He was a singer from a band, Audio Slave, and he had some other stuff. And him and I'm blanking out on his name for some reason, but Linkin Park's lead singer, Chester. Yeah, he those two were because those are some musicians, bands that I grew up with. So those sucked, and they both died pretty young. So
yeah.
But aside from that, celebrity deaths don't really get to me too much. I mean, it sucks, for anyone to die, but yeah, when you're assassinated, it's just a whole nother story. So
yeah, I think in addition to what I was kind of alluding to is our own personal attachment to the individual because of their art, their music, whatever their political commentary, whatever draws us to them. In addition to that, I think there's a factor of age. You could be the biggest Betty White fan in the world, but she was 100 years old. That's still sad, but she lived as long as a human possibly can live, basically. And so, that you weigh that against a 31-year-old who's losing his life. And then also, the tragedy of how it occurred. Did this person kind of, lead to their own demise, or was it completely innocent in it? The Robin Williams part of it. And I was never a huge Robin Williams fan. I certainly appreciate his enormous talent. Like, that guy could talk all day and come up with ad libs like nobody I've ever seen. But it was sad to hear later what kind of mentally he went through, and just, the things that he was fighting, that in a very honest way, trying to work through, mental issues. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the worst part for Robin Williams. But a lot of comedians, they make other people happy, but inside they're not happy. Like, actually, Chris Farley was one of my favorite comedians ever, and that guy had demons. Yeah. But anyway,
Farley's so funny.
Yeah. Tommy Boy is like one of my all-time favorite movies.
And
but,
like, even when he would come on late night TV, like he'd come on Letterman and do like cartwheels, and just the way he was so like, just the whole character was just bust me up.
I love Chris Farley. He was great. Yep. But anyways, to get to Michael asked me a pretty good question earlier. He said, out of Clemson, Alabama, and Notre Dame, who's on because I made a comment like Clemson was on thin ice, and he threw Notre Dame in there with Alabama and Clemson, and Notre Dame is on the most is on the thinnest ice, because they might be able to get into the playoffs if they're 10-2, if like Arkansas has a really good season and USC does what I think they're going to do, and becomes ranked by the time they play them. And like, it's possible they could get in at 10-2, but if you lose your first two games to Miami and Texas A&M, which are the cream of the crop of your schedule, that's not a good sign. And it's unfortunate, because they're breaking a new quarterback, and they the way the schedule is, it's just, that's your two best teams right off the bat, and you don't have time to break your quarterback in, get him some game reps. So and to be fair, CJ Carr was not the reason that Notre Dame lost that game to Miami. It was definitely the offensive line was the main culprit, and the defensive line wasn't that great either. But those are things they can fix. So hopefully Freeman let them have it this week in practice, and they come out firing on all cylinders, and they let Jeremiah Love run the ball a little bit more, get him more involved in the run game. I don't typically like to rag on coordinators. Like, oh, they had a terrible game plan, but most people would agree that game plan from Denbrock against Miami wasn't the greatest. So there's room for improvement on all the way around. But make no mistake, though, Alabama and Clemson are still both on thin ice. Like, especially if Alabama wants to get into the playoffs this year. They missed it last year, and I'm not so sure that their team isn't even a little bit worse than last year's team yet. So we'll find out a lot in that. Not necessarily against Wisconsin. I think they're going to beat Wisconsin comfortably, but we'll learn a little bit more about Alabama in that Wisconsin game.
Yeah. So if you bring it up that way in regards to what team can least afford to lose, I always split that between, okay, logistically, what's the most important game? Is it a conference game? How good's the team? Where's the game being played? Logistically, how is this going to factor into, a playoff look? And then just more or less, what is going to be the worst looking loss in terms of level of play, who they're playing, who are we going to feel the least confident in if they all three would lose tomorrow? And to me, the latter point is Alabama, just because they're playing the worst team. I don't think there's any question, at least at this point, until we see something much different, that Wisconsin's the worst out of those three opponents. So if Alabama lost at home to Wisconsin, my goodness, that's yikes. Where Clemson, boy, if they lost to Georgia Tech, well, that's only one conference loss. I think many of us could still see Clemson limping through at 6-2, 7-1, getting into the ACC championship game. And regardless of what their total record is, it wouldn't look that pretty, but they could do what they did last year, where they lost 4 games by the time it was said and done. But you make a great point about Notre Dame needing, because of lack of quality opponents going forward, and probably the best 2 in their rearview mirror with losses, that being the most devastating. Logistically, Alabama plays the least important game, because again, Notre Dame's playing their second most difficult opponent, or so we think. Clemson's playing a conference game. Bama could be 0-2 outside the conference against power conference opponents and then go win the SEC. Now, that's unlikely that they're going to be that good after being that bad, but it's happened and it's logistically possible. So their entire SEC season's in front of them. So yeah, I think Notre Dame has the biggest spotlight on them.
Well, and here's where you pay, right, for not being in a conference, because as you said, Clemson basically backdoored their way into the college football playoffs last year by beating SMU, which, as we know, was not a great team. Like that was, it is what it is. But Clemson has a way to kind of get themselves in, even if they have a rough season. Whereas, Notre Dame being independent, this is part of what comes with it. You don't have a championship game. You can, get that extra data point. So if the bulk of your season, even if they start crushing everybody after they lose 2 in a row, it's not going to help that much. So yeah, Notre Dame's on the thinnest ice out of those teams.
There's
in
another
regards
part of this, Rob, not to cut you off, but just to extend on your point, that is a comparison point for Notre Dame that they lack. And it's not just that they can't get to a championship game, but if you're in the conference, let's say you're in the Big Ten, and even if you're not going to get to a championship game, you clearly distinguish yourself as number 3 or number 4 in the conference. Well, then we're sitting there thinking, okay, you're 10-2, you're Ohio State, you're in 4th place, but you're going to the playoff, or whomever. We're going to see these scenarios play out every year where we're going to see 10-2 LSU, you're in the playoffs, or a 9-3 with a really strong schedule, Oklahoma, you're in the playoffs, because we can compare them directly to their SEC opponents and their SEC standings and say, that's the 3rd best team in the SEC, so they're going to go to the playoff. Well, Notre Dame has no comparison like that. So even not getting to a championship game, if you're strong enough in one of those 2 leagues, then you're good to go. And they don't have that type of we're trying to say, well, they played 2 games against the SEC and they played 5 against the ACC and 1 or 2 against the Big Ten or whatever it turns out to be. And it's just kind of like, there's not this direct, like, okay, Alabama went 9-3, but they righted the ship and they played really well in the SEC. So they're the 3rd best team in the SEC. So they're going to get to the playoff. You don't have that pecking order with Notre Dame to say this is where they should be slotted against their conference.
Yeah, and as a Notre Dame fan, I understand, like, that's just what comes with the territory, right? Like you don't get to have your cake and eat it too. Like, you're independent, sure, and that can help you in some ways, and you get all the money in the college football playoff if you get to the championship, whatever. But like, this is where it hurts you. So it's a 2-edged sword. Getting into the Big 12, I am baffled by the Big 12 this year, Mark. I thought, like probably a lot of people, Arizona State might be the class of the conference again, and they are not even like fit to tie the boots of almost any other. I mean, that was a horrible loss the other day. I think Texas Tech, and probably Utah are the class of the conference this year. And I'm kind of leaning towards Utah, if I'm honest. What are your opinion? What's your thoughts on the Big 12 real quick? And then I'll get off here so another caller can jump on.
What you're saying makes total sense. However, it's the Big 12, and I am not jumping to any conclusions that just because Arizona State lost to Mississippi State, I just am not that they won't just dive into the conference and be one of the best teams. I just don't think I get what you're saying, but I think we could take any of the teams that you just mentioned and give them a trip to Starkville on a Saturday night, and we may see the same conclusion to the game. I think that's the Big 12 against the SEC. I think that's a top 3 or 4 team in the Big 12 taking on a bottom 3 or 4 team in the SEC on the road.
Well, and it goes to show you the power of Cam Scatterb. Like it kind of goes to show you the power of like one player. And I know Arizona State's not entirely the same team as they were last year, but I mean, they played Texas and they darn near won that game. Some people would argue they should have won that game.
Yes.
And then they turn around and a lot of people would say Texas was one of the premier teams in the SEC last year. Whereas no one's really saying that about Mississippi State this year. So no, I totally get your point. It is an SEC team. But yeah. So Anyway, Mark, yeah, like I said, I'll always great talking to you, and appreciate your show, and I'll let you go so you can get another caller on.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Yep.
We've done a little promotion here tonight, but we do appreciate all these super chats. I will get to the next one. vocfb.com. And I have not been focusing on the actual articles you can find there. So be looking out for that in particular. Let's give this a look, because then you also shop there. And I joked with Karen the other day, but maybe it shouldn't be a joke that she should be our spokesmodel. Would it be a spokesmodel? I guess she wouldn't be doing any speaking. It would just be a model. She would be our model of sorts. What am I looking to do here? There we go. No, there we go. Come on. So there's vocfb.com. Who's that pointing at us there? That's kind of rude. Who is that guy? Top 25, that actually makes sense. And then all these other great articles. But I'm then going to go to the shop here. So you just click on shop, and there you go. You can go to the main channel and all the main network standard look there, and then various teams. And I don't know who our next caller is, because I would pull their team up here. We'll just say, I think there might be a few Nebraska fans around. We'll do this for many. There's the Nebraska collection here at the Voice of College Football. Hats, polos, t-shirts, mugs, koozies, tumblers, all that good stuff. So check it out, vocfb.com/shop. All right, next caller. Oh, I wanted to address Christopher Foote. I think I've called in at least 100 times. Chris, it seems like it's been 1,000 times. No, I'm just kidding. Chris, if you would like to call, I promise I will not yell at you. I will not call you any names. I will not even be sarcastic. I wish I wouldn't have said the last one. So anyway, Chris, you're invited. I think you're encouraged. I think we have some encouragement out there to get you to call in. And Minnie says, yay, GBR, look at that beautiful red. It's a little bit brighter than Ohio State red, I do believe. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got Luke on the line.
All right. I want to talk about how pathetic Colorado looked today versus, last year Houston was middle of the road, and this year they are improved. But I don't know why we decided to send Ryan Staub out there. I mean, if Staub at the beginning of the year was a third-string quarterback, he was a third string for a reason. And he had one good game versus Delaware, but they played Delaware. It's Delaware's first year in Division I, and it's not like a big win. And for him to go out there and for Dion to put Ryan Staub out there to start a game in Big 12 play, I just don't think that was the right decision, because he looked like a middle schooler out there. He was struggling. He couldn't throw the ball. And now we're 0-1, and now we have more work to do, and it's not ideal.
Well, you're being kind calling Houston a middle of the road team last year. I think they were 2-7 in the conference. So they are better, but this is the first real opponent they've played. I have been a bit curious about this Colorado quarterbacking situation as well. Caden Salter, then I'm hearing Juju Lewis, that he's played a little bit, right?
Yeah, he played against Delaware. He played like 2 drives, and then they sat him again.
So based on what you've seen, would you just play Salter?
I'd play Salter. I'd pick one, but I definitely wouldn't put the third-string quarterback out there in the Big 12 opener.
Has Dion been asked about this?
I don't know, because I haven't seen the post-game interview after the game, but I know that definitely Staub probably will not be starting next week. But most likely, I don't know, just if you're a team, pick one quarterback and go with that quarterback until he either gets hurt or he can't throw the ball anymore. Then switch to the next quarterback. But I don't know why they went with their third string in the beginning, but it's a little interesting. And then I also wanted to talk about, I think Miami's got a tough game versus South Florida this weekend. Like, I mean, South Florida in between 2017 and 2024, they were 0-19 versus top 25 teams. And this year they're 2-0 versus who'd they play? They played Florida and Boise State, right?
Yes.
And they looked really good versus Boise State. They got the win versus Florida, but I think Miami has a tough game. Like Miami can't just go into this game thinking that they're going to win by 50, because if they do, they're going to get caught off guard and get steamrolled or lose to USF.
Well, I would think that the Florida outcome was the best thing that Mario Cristobal could have asked for.
Yeah.
So I would think that he would be able to get his team's attention because of that outcome. Now, if USF would have lost, they were an 18-point underdog. If they would have lost that game 35-17 like they were supposed to, then that wouldn't be the case. But since they won that game, I would think that he would be able to get his team focused.
Yeah. My question to you is, if USF beats Miami this week, do they jump into the top 10?
Well, they should. They're in my top 10, the one that makes sense, the one that's based on the results on the field. There's few teams in the country that have beaten the likes of Boise State by 4 touchdowns and one in the swamp against Florida. How many teams in the country have 2 wins like that? I've got them like number 6 in the country, but I know I do it differently. I don't think they're the 6th best team in the country. That's not what I'm saying when I do those rankings.
Yeah.
Where are they ranked right now? I don't follow the traditional rankings.
I think right now they're ranked 18.
Oh yeah, they should. If they beat number 5 on the road,
yeah,
or whatever Miami is,
yeah, number 5, they should. I think they could jump top 10, maybe even squeak into the top 7.
They should.
They should. They should be. If they beat Miami at Miami, they should be top 5. They should be put into the top 5 because, I mean, then they've had 3 solid wins versus 3 top 25 teams. That, I mean, they embarrassed Boise State. They got the win in Florida, which a lot of teams don't do. And then if they beat Miami at Miami, I think that would really shock some people.
So I can say this right now. Everybody put me on record, unless I'm missing something out there, and I might be. If South Florida wins at Miami, I'm going to have them ranked number 1.
Wow.
Well, they would have the best resume in the country.
Yeah.
Who else has beaten Boise State by 4 touchdowns, 1 at Florida, and especially if Florida beats LSU. If Florida beats LSU, then that really boosts their resume, and then they go to Miami and win.
That would be – and now the question is, like, if Miami does lose to South Florida, how far do they drop in the rankings?
Oh, they'll be in the 15 range, 17, something like that.
Yeah.
I would think. Well, they beat Notre Dame. I would think it would somewhat depend on what Notre Dame does. If Notre Dame loses to Texas A&M, then that win gets dragged down. But if Notre Dame posts a nice win against Texas A&M, then Miami's not going to get punished as much.
Yeah. And also, why does Indiana play Indiana State? That was bullying. That was not even that wasn't even a good game.
Why does Indiana schedule whoever they schedule?
They've
Kennesaw
had
State and Old Dominion,
Kennesaw State, Indiana State.
Yeah,
that's 3 terrible games.
Last year was, Southern Illinois and Oh my word. It was just as bad. Whatever it was horrendous.
Yeah. Like if you're Indiana, they need to like play actual games. Now next week they have Illinois at home, and then they play Iowa, and then they play Oregon at Oregon. So they have some harder games. I mean, next week all the conference play starts, but if you're Indiana, Indiana needs to play some real teams at the beginning of the year to like kind of get ready. Because if you're beating up on Indiana State, that's not going to get you ready for number 9 Illinois. Like they need to put some actual teams in there.
Yeah, so the defense I've heard from Indiana fans is that when they scheduled these games, they didn't know that they were going to be this good. That to me is a loser's mentality, that if you run your athletic department like that, then you should be treated as such. Oh, you didn't know you were going to be this good? You didn't anticipate or think that you were building a team that was going to be worthy of competing for the playoff? Well, then we'll treat you like that.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, well, that's all I wanted to talk about. But great call. Great show. Always the highlight of my day.
Thank you, Luke. It's great to hear from you. And enjoy the football tomorrow.
Yeah, you too.
Once again, folks, vocfb.com. And it's just not Nebraska. It's just about any team that you would want. I don't know if there's a person in the chat whose favorite team is not represented. We've got about 20 to 25 teams. So Wake Forest fans, I'm sorry, we have not gotten to you yet. But about 20 to 25 teams. And again, tumblers, mugs, koozies, polos, T-shirts, hats. There you go. Let's get to the scoreboard. And also keep in mind that we've got the call-in line. We also have Adam showing up with, let me see. Let me back up. Adam, thank you so much for the contributions. You know we appreciate that. Oh, that's David. I'm sorry. David, first and foremost. Coffee, Mark. Coffee, Mark? I had somebody mention coffee to me today. I hate coffee. So somebody wanted to grab some coffee today. And I said, well, I'll go, but I'm not drinking coffee. This has happened to me 2 days in a row, actually. Yesterday, I went to a little get-together in the morning, and it's at a coffee shop, and I forgot to bring my water, and I knew I needed to drink something, and I went to the counter and said, yeah, what do you have? And she started mentioning and running down the list of lattes, a zillion different kind of lattes. And I said, yeah, I don't like coffee. Do you have anything else to drink? I ended up getting myself a fruit smoothie. And then today it was a comment about coffee, getting coffee. And my response was, sure, I'll go out for coffee. I'm not drinking coffee. I've told this story a million times, but the last time I drank coffee, I was about 23 years old, and I was, no, not hungover. I was like 23 years old, and I was broadcasting a high school football state playoff game in Ohio, and we got an early blast of winter, and it was like, it's horrendous. It was like 6 degrees outside, and which is cold enough. Now I would be frozen solid. I'm not used to that kind of temperature, but back then, the 6 degrees, I'm fine, except for talking. I was broadcasting the game, and my jaw was frozen. And I asked for coffee. I think I wanted hot chocolate, actually, but maybe all the milk wasn't the best. But anyway, hot chocolate, phenomenal. Coffee, no thank you. But when I just need to talk, loosen up my jaw, yeah, just bring in the coffee. I'm just shoveling down the coffee just to stay warm and loosen up my jaw. All right. Thank you so much for that, David. That's very kind of you. Adam, thank you so much for the contribution. That's very kind of you as well. David inspired me. Well, as long as you two can keep inspiring each other, and you can inspire some other folks as well, but that's very kind. And you know what, Adam, you can tie as many Drew Aller insults to those super chats as you would like. If Drew Aller throws an interception against Villanova, he should be forced to live with Kate Klubnik for a week. Adam continues to put a spin on the Drew Aller narrative and the Drew Aller bashing. He just finds another spin each and every time. And this time, now he's starting to pull Kate Klubnik into it. The bottom 10 for Adam is definitely Drew Aller, number 1 in the bottom 10. And now I think Kate Klubnik seems to be working his way in there. I'm trying to think. Who else is on Adam's list? I know there's a few others around that Adam doesn't seem to be too impressed with. Adam was really high last season on South Carolina for a long time. At the end, he was high on Florida. He was high on Notre Dame winning the national championship. Keep in mind, let's give some respect to our guy Adam here. Preseason, Adam picked Notre Dame to win the national championship. This is preseason 2024. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois. Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois in week 2, and then of course their season was over. That's not what I said, but many of you were laughing and writing them off. And laughing, I get it. Of course, college football is fun. If you can kick Notre Dame while they're down, they just lost to Northern Illinois. Even though they went to the national championship game last year, Notre Dame detractors, critics, haters should be kicking them for losing to Northern Illinois. I get it. Absolutely. But they did rebound to go to the national championship game. So the only person on the show that had a better prediction than Adam about who was going to win the national championship last year is... Okay. But thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. So we are here till when did we? Well, I got my timer right here. We've got at least 35 minutes, and we can keep going if you'd like. Moose thinks that Bryce Underwood is better than Julian Sayin. I think based on what we've seen the first 2 weeks, I don't know about that. They both faced a legitimate defense. And Julian Sayin actually played pretty darn well against Texas. Now, truth be known, he did have a better defense playing for him on his side. He also had... So, to set the record straight here, Oklahoma really controlled the game against Michigan. I was surprised. Both lines of scrimmage, Oklahoma was just the far superior team. Texas, Ohio State looked like the better team, but not by much. So Bryce Underwood did not have the defensive backing that Julian Sayin did against the big opponent. Bryce Underwood put it up 24 times, completed all of 9. Julian Sayin was 13 of 17 against Oklahoma. And, I charted this Bryce Underwood game against Oklahoma. Check out Michigan podcast, Steve Dace. I was on there this week again. And, yeah, Bryce Underwood's a super talented quarterback. I'm not projecting his future to be abysmal in any such way. I think he's a tremendous quarterback. He's a tremendous talent. He's not a tremendous quarterback right now. He missed 9 throws in that game. Just blatantly whiffed. Just whiffed. Just missed the guy. 9 throws out of 24. So he hit 9, then he had those 9. Then I counted 2 drops. I think it was 2 drops, maybe 3 drops. And then what's that leave? Like 2 or 3 where the defensive back made a nice play or something. Or maybe it was batted at the line. That was one play. So Bryce Underwood. Julian Sayin is playing better than Bryce Underwood. Now, Julian Sayin is better wide receivers. That's not even... That is the biggest difference between these two teams right now, is obviously Ohio State's got the best wide receivers in the country, and Michigan has like the 60th best wide receivers in the country. And Michigan's just, man, if that continues what we saw last Saturday night, I was about to say Michigan's in for a rough season, but against that schedule, maybe not. Michigan could be the worst 9-3 team in the country when it's all said and done. But that's just one game. I am not saying that. I'm not projecting that, but I'm saying if they continue to play like that. Oh, okay. So Moose is saying, and this is a fair point. Mark watched the game. He wasn't getting. Yes, I did watch the game. I actually watched the game. And then I watched all of his pass attempts again. So I've watched him throw all of those passes twice, at least, plus replays. Yes. Yeah, he was being hurried. That's a fair point. Even when he had time to throw, he missed guys. Now, if you've listened to me for a long time, I give a lot of leeway to college quarterbacks, especially young college quarterbacks, because I think we compare them too much to the guys that we see on Sunday, and there's no comparison between those skill sets. You know, we've never seen anybody at the collegiate level play like an Aaron Rodgers or a Tom Brady in their prime in the NFL. Those levels of quarterback play are just completely in different universes. So I am pretty fair in my quarterback analysis, but Bryce Underwood did not play well. He didn't play just horribly. He did not throw a pick. He didn't throw a ball really in harm's way that I remember. So he wasn't terrible, but he wasn't good. And Julian Sayin's been good. He was flawless against Grambling. Of course, that doesn't mean much. Well, timeout. Threw a pick. He had one incomplete pass. It was a pick. Okay, not flawless, 95% flawless. And then everything else was, but it was easy. Guys were wide open. But you watch Julian Sayin against Texas, he was almost perfect in that game. Am I stating anything? To quote the great Charlie Kirk, prove me wrong. Julian Sayin was basically perfect against Texas. He might have missed 2 throws. He went 13 for 20, had 4 drops for sure. Now, they didn't ask him to do that much. He didn't have to do that much. Well, a more experienced Julian Sayin down the road would be asked to do more, but they kind of bottled things up, trusted the defense. I did think that the TD pass to Carnell Tate was underthrown until I heard the explanation that that's the way they wanted it. They figure it's Carnell Tate. He's going to beat this guy. Underthrow it. Don't overthrow him. So, yeah, Moose. But Moose, you're missing my freaking point here. He was perfect practically against Texas. Bryce Underwood, no, he didn't suck, but he was not good against Oklahoma. So you're arguing a stupid point here, and you're wrong. I'm not saying that Julian Sayin is better than Bryce Underwood. That remains to be seen. He is playing better than Bryce Underwood right now. He played one great opponent, and he played much better against that team than Bryce Underwood played against Oklahoma. They both played one legitimate team. Now, Bryce Underwood played a better team in New Mexico, if we want to take that into consideration. But Julian Sayin was perfect, yes, against a high school team. How can you be better than perfect? So let's not hold that against him. Let's not give him a lot of credit for what he did against Grambling State, but let's not hold it against him. What was he supposed to do? Well, he went 20 for 20, but he was, the guy went, 19 for 20? So let's just throw that away. Just don't even consider it, even though he basically was perfect. And I don't care who's out there. He threw the ball to the guys, and they caught the ball every time, except once. But put that aside. I am just evaluating Bryce Underwood against Oklahoma, Julian Sayin against Ohio State. And again, I am clearly stating that Julian Sayin did have a more favorable position in that game. His defense played better. He did have a running game. He did not have a running game against Texas, but he did have his defense dominate the game. And so he was playing from in front. Bryce Underwood was playing from behind, but he had a lot to do with that. And he missed a ton of throws. He missed 9 throws out of 24. He should be missing 4, 5. And probably in a few weeks, he will be missing only 4 or 5, not 9. Okay. Jim, thank you for showing up, buddy. It's always good to see you. Thank you so much for all that you do here, Jim. I see you in the chat all the time. Thank you for that. Nico regretting leaving. By the way, tough participation crowd. Tough participation crowd. Yeah, the link we will put back in the chat because I know it's difficult to get, and I should put that in the description section, and I apologize when I don't. So I guess I should be apologizing like every time. It should be it there. There's the call-in line. And we will get to that UCLA score in just a second because I want to see what he's doing tonight. Yeah, Jim, absolutely. Well, I said that at the time, and we didn't. We would have figured at this point UCLA should be 2-1. They'll beat UNLV, they'll beat New Mexico, and they might even beat Utah. They were only a 5 to 6 point underdog in that game. UCLA, it wouldn't have surprised me or anybody else if they would be 3-0 right now, but they're not. They're on the verge of going to 0-3. And Nico, as I stated at the time, just to review this situation, this is totally ridiculous. And this is a just sign of the times in college football that Nico Iamaleava, and I can't get it out of my head what the real MVP calls him, and who knows where that came from. The I'm a Levia, whatever it was. But Nico was making how much at Tennessee? What was the figure? Is that $3 million? Guy's making $3 million a year. I'm not making $3 million a year. I'm barely clearing $2.8 million a year. Nico's making $3 million a year. And he's not a top quarterback. He's a mid-level SEC quarterback. And if you really look into the numbers and watch the games, his numbers were bolstered by big performances against bad teams. He did not play particularly well against the good teams on the schedule. His team went to the playoff. He had something to do with that, but that was basically Dylan Sampson and 2 or 3 really good wide receivers, Squirrel White included, Brew McCoy, and basically that defensive front. The DN that was a first-round pick, James Pierce, that defensive line. That's why Tennessee made the playoff. not because of Nico Iamaleava. Somebody should have, I would have loved to have had 5 minutes with Nico to discuss this decision. And I would have simply said, son, you make $3 million a year. And I know you have little respect or you have little appreciation for what that really means in this world and in this country, but you make $3 million a year and you are paid more than 99 point something percent of the people in this country. And you are being paid more than probably all but 3 or 4 college football players in this country. And let's face it, you're not that good. You're not good enough to be making that much money, but you are. So feel good about that and be appreciative and work your butt off to earn that money. Work your butt off to repay the University of Tennessee and whoever's collective that paid you all that money. Work your butt off, stay here. And you know what? On top of it, you are playing for one of the best offensive minds in the country. And he is going to make you an NFL quarterback if you apply yourself. But no, what Nico decided to do was he overvalued himself. He got bad advice, and he thought he was something that he wasn't. And he went out in the open market, and we saw the teams just drop by the day. Florida State, nope, they're not in. Alabama, are they interested? Nope. Who else was some of those teams that were brought to the forefront that were not interested? Nope, we're good. He's not good enough, number one. Number two, we're going to apply this money elsewhere on the roster. And number three, we don't want the headache of a prima donna and his dad that are going to overvalue him. And we're going to be in the same position that the University of Tennessee's in today. We're going to be in that position next year. So then he gets dragged all the way down to UCLA, and he didn't get the $4 million he wanted. What did he get? I'm sure some of you have seen estimates out there. Wasn't it supposed to be maybe 2.5? So he takes a pay cut to go to UCLA, play for a worse team, worst offensive coordinator, and all of that. So yeah, dumb decision. Now, a lot of 20-year-olds make dumb decisions, but his was obviously public, and it was unfortunately fueled by greedy hangers-on, and apparently his father being one of those. And super chat coming in from our guy, Nolan. Nolan, thank you so much for being here. Nolan has paid his first $1.99, or about $1.20 to yours truly, to make some Washington Voice of College Football merch. So, yeah, we've got, let me double check, because we don't have a Washington channel. Now, it's not that we don't want one. It's that when we did our massive haul of various hosts to bolster our team this past summer, we did not come across any hosts for Washington. Therefore, we don't have a Washington channel yet. Therefore, no Washington Voice of College Football merch. I don't know how our buddy Josh at the Oklahoma channel, he's really in charge of this. So I can ask him to see, is it really a heavy lift to add Washington? And Nolan, with all due respect, we're not going to add it just for you. I would love to get you a Washington shirt and some merch, but I'll ask Josh. We'll find out. So if he says, you know what, it's not a big deal, I can rip off everything that we've done and just rip off a Washington set, we'll add them. Absolutely. But if not, I would need if it's a heavy lift, then I would need an outpouring of Washington fans to be demanding Washington merch at the Voice of College Football. And I am somehow not anticipating that, but I will ask Josh. Nolan, thank you so much for asking. I do appreciate that you're interested. That's I don't get that lost in all of that. I was just joking, but I would love to be able to say, yeah, we will produce, especially for you, some Washington merch, but we can't do that. All right, so let's get to the scores. Haircut? No haircut? I don't know. All right, so on to the scores. Man, StreamYard has put more steps into this. That used to pop up a lot sooner. Arizona leads Kansas State 23-17. Oh, we only have 2 minutes left in the game. I really need to reconfigure some things in here. Man, I've been lazy when it comes to that because I should just bring in a couple of screens so I can watch these games while we're on. That's really bad of me. Let's who's got this game? It's a Fox game. I don't think I can call up that on Hulu. Regardless, yeah, let's see who's got the ball and where they got the ball and what's going on with this one. There's the game cast. What? Currently unavailable. That's why you're here, people. What's going on? Unavailable. Okay. Huh. Come on. We'll pull up the box score. Let's see if we can. Noah Fafita, 16-33. Oh, man. Ismail Mahdi, 189 yards rushing on the Kansas State defense. Avery Johnson having a horrendous night, 11 of 23 for 81. And not running it very well. He's obviously been sacked a number of times. By those numbers, I'm surprised they're within 6. But everyone keep me abreast since we cannot find the game feed to track the last 2 minutes of that game. But Kansas State's down 6. And that's what the story is from Tucson. Elsewhere, UCLA with a field goal in the third quarter to cut the New Mexico lead to 14-10 at the Rose Bowl. And those are the two games we're staying on top of. What did this Indiana box score look like? This almost looks like Julian Sayin against Grambling. Fernando Mendoza, 19 of 20 with 5 touchdown passes. And Kobe Martin, 109 yards rushing. They rushed for 301, passed for 379. That's 680 total offense to Indiana State's. They rushed for 39. They passed for 38. 38-yard passing effort. So 77 total yards against 680. 680 to 77 in total offense. Good Lord. How many points will Oregon put up tomorrow at Northwestern? How about 38? How about 38? All right. You got me for at least 13 minutes, folks. Let's see this conclusion to Kansas State and Arizona. 75. Wait a minute. Oh, you might have me for more than that. 1, 2, 3. If we get some calls, I will stay on the line until, what do we got here? You can keep me around for longer. But I've been talking. So I will hear from anyone else out there. I must be tiring out on these live streams because I used to get on these live streams and I don't know when we did our first call-in show because I did live streams for years with no calls and I would just sit here and talk for 3 hours with no calls. And I would just sit here and talk. And that's how we did it. Then we started to get calls, and then I'd stay on here forever. So let's get back to the scoreboard, just because again, I wish we had the drive chart going. Wish I could find that. But we'll track this Kansas State game. So we want to see what happens here in the final 2 minutes. Kansas State could drop to 1-3. All right. It looked like we had our buddy Chris Foote trying to dial in, and now he's nowhere to be found. But Chris, if you call in, obviously I'm going to take your call. Adam says you must stay on until noon tomorrow. Wow. I know I said that at the beginning of the show, but man, that seems a bit rough at this point. It's only 12:30. I don't have the engine, do not have the motor that I used to, I guess, on these call-in shows. All right. So you guys keep an eye on the Kansas State Arizona game. At least I would like to know who's got the ball. Who's got the ball? All right, let's go to the scores and the schedule for tomorrow. Let's do that. Week 3. NC State was down 24-17 at half at Wake last night. They outscored the Demon Deacons 17-0 in the second half, took home a 24-17 or 34-24 win on Thursday night. So NC State is 3-0. NC State at 3-0. We got the real MVP stopping by, breaking one of our rules, but of course it's allowed tonight because I need some company. The real, what's going on?
I wasn't going to call in, but I had about 2 or 3 people begging me to call back in, so I figured, you know what? I'm a man of the people, Mark. I better just do what the people tell me to do.
You are that.
Thank you, Mark. I was going to ask you about the NC State. NC State versus Wake Forest reminded me of just 2 middle-of-the-road average football teams playing, like 7-5, 6-6 type football teams.
Yeah.
Is that what your vibe was throughout that game?
Yes. So let's look, though, at our favorite portion of this, which would be, of course, we got the schedule. I am curious to see some numbers here real quick, and then we'll get to the schedule on the NC State side, since they've broken out to a 3-0, to see if they've got an outside shot to have some kind of presence in the ACC. CJ Bailey, 23-32, 201, 3 touchdowns. It's a nice night. Hollywood Smothers, the original Oklahoma commit signee, had a big night, 164 yards. on the ground. Noah Rogers, he was a Ohio State signee originally, 52 yards receiving. Justin Jolly, he's a good player, 2 touchdowns. Okay. Let's look at NC State's schedule.
I want to comment while you're looking at the schedule. I was
Sure.
shocked they came back because Wake Forest, the momentum of the first quarter was on their side. First play was the 98-yard touchdown from the kickoff. Then they scored quick. NC State, I think, went 3-and-out, and Wake Forest went right down the field. I thought this could get ugly for NC State, but for them to come back with that environment and a Wake Forest team that really, this is one of the key games of their season, because there's some teams down the road I don't think they're even going to be competitive in. For them to come back and dominate the way they did, very impressive for me.
So let's be enthusiastic about NC State just to iron out the possibilities. Looking for those dark horses out there. 3-0. That's not an ACC win, everyone. At Duke. So they'll be a slight underdog in that game, but if they can get by Duke, they should roll into, NC State is not in a place that they can be looking past anyone.
Right.
But Virginia Tech obviously looked ragged on offense against South Carolina, and they looked ragged, period, after the first quarter against Vandy.
I know, but man, NC State almost lost to East Carolina again.
True. Yes.
Like, the gap between Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech tells me a lot more than it is to me, it shows how good Vanderbilt is.
Yes.
Like, Virginia Tech is still just in that cluster of 7, 5, 6, and 6 teams.
Yeah, the ACC is Miami, Clemson, Florida State, and then SMU somewhere hanging on. And then, the ACC is basically what it's been forever. A glut of Boston College and Wake Forest. And again, people are going to point out aberrations to this, exceptions. Of course, NC State sometimes is really good. Louisville sometimes really good. But there's always this glut of Georgia Tech and Pitt and Duke, and they're 7-5, and they're 7-5, and they're 6-6, and anyone can win these games. And that's what we're looking at with Virginia Tech. But we'll play along with NC State doing something and being 6-0 when they go to Notre Dame.
Then they're going to lose that game 45-14 if they're 6-0.
Yeah. That is not only you speaking the quality of the two teams, but that's kind of been NC State football forever, and under Dave Doran in particular. Anytime that they have an opportunity to do anything where they can gain any kind of relevance nationally, they bomb. At Pitt, Georgia Tech, they're just not good enough, even though individually all of these are winnable games, to win all of them. But maybe there's a universe in which they finish 10-2.
I think 9-3 is probably the ceiling, because that Georgia Tech game is more 70-30 in my opinion. And combine that with both Miami and Florida State, which is probably 90-10. I think 9-3 is absolute best case scenario for NC State this year, which is, a decent bowl game. They're not going to go to the playoffs at 9-3, but they can go to one of their better bowl games and finish the win with 10 wins. So that'd be nice for them. To me, the ACC is, you've got Tier A, which is Florida State, Miami. Those two teams have clearly separated themselves from the pack. Below that is Clemson, Louisville, SMU, Georgia Tech. And then it's everyone else. And then at the absolute basement is Stanford. Yes.
I would agree. And there'll be some differentiation from that at some point, a little bit. But I have no issue with your tier system as it stands right now.
Thank you. And Moose, I appreciate the SB nomination, by the way. Please mail me my award.
Although, Daryl, that you believe that Georgia Tech is 70-30 on NC State, knowing what I know about the FPI and their favoritism about home teams, let's click on this. What do you guess the FPI says, though?
I think it'll be, is it a home game for NC State or?
Yes.
I think it'll be 60-40.
Really? I think it's going to be closer than that. Oh, okay. 62-37-ish. Okay. All right.
Yeah, they seem to over-evaluate the home road advantage. There's like a good
Yes.
5-10% difference just between road and home, and I don't think it's nearly that much. Now, in certain places, it matters because they're a really excellent football team who also happens to not have the disadvantages of playing on the road. But for most places, these average, middle of the road to bad teams, I don't think it matters that much at all. Mark, we do have a final. Kansas State has fallen to 1-3. Arizona won the game 23-17. They did miss a field goal with 2 minutes to go in the game to increase the lead to 9. Kansas State could not march down the field with Avery Johnson. Is it time just to call it quit for the Avery Johnson experiment because he's looked horrendous to start the season? Go to the backup quarterback and just wash this season out?
Let's see if I recognize the backup quarterback.
I have no idea who the backup quarterback is, by the way, for Kansas State. But what I do know is Avery Johnson is not the answer.
No, he's not the answer, but he still is probably the best quarterback and certainly the most talented quarterback they have. Kansas State's backup quarterback, who I probably know. Oh, Kansas State's backup quarterback is Blake Barnett. He's kicked around a little bit. Anyway, well, if they believe that Avery Johnson is going to be back next season, then they need to stay with him and work out his issues. But yeah, Avery Johnson is not going to the NFL draft the way he's playing. So,
do you think Avery Johnson is good enough to be better than your average transfer quarterback?
yes.
Okay.
I still believe that I'm hesitant to say I believe in Avery Johnson, but I saw the Iowa State game. I've watched him play quite a few times. He's a very elusive quarterback, very dynamic on the move, very erratic throwing the ball. Erratic, not just game to game, drive to drive. And yeah, I'm not touting him as a top quarterback by any stretch, and not just so to add on to your question about his comparing him to other transfer quarterbacks and who they could get at Kansas State. That's what I think is the key addendum to that is who they could get at Kansas State.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but with how bad the Big 12 is in general, even if you get a marginal Big 10 or SEC quarterback who's had a bad luck, let's say, whatever reason, John Mateer transfers and he goes to Kansas State, I would instantly think Kansas State's a Big 12 title contender.
Sure.
And he's not that good of a quarterback in the grand scheme of things.
We'll see. He looked pretty good last week to me.
I think that tells me a whole lot about Michigan's quarterback discipline than it did Oklahoma. I'm not a believer in Oklahoma still. I still think that their ceiling is 8-4, 9-3. So,
well, 9-3 might make the playoff.
Maybe for them. Have you seen that schedule? Every team they play from here to the end of the season is currently ranked in the AP poll. Now, I know the AP poll we don't trust in, and I don't fully trust either, but that tells you the quality of team they're playing.
Yeah, I know it. I picked them to go 9-3 and go to the playoff. So let's, so again, I just don't believe that Kansas State, they have not during this transfer portal era shown us the resources that they go out and get premier players or even top half quarterbacks, top half in power conference play quarterbacks. But yeah, Avery Johnson's not unapproachable to be benched if they can go out and get the next, well, it's kind of ironic. I would say Will Howard type quarterback because they lost him. But yeah, John Mateer. John Mateer would be a starting quarterback at Kansas State right now. I think he would have won the job over Avery Johnson in a nice quarterback battle. And then he would certainly be the quarterback based on the way Avery Johnson's playing right now. What leads us to something here, Darrell, is we could do the same thing now with Arizona that we were doing with NC State. Now that they're 3-0.
Yeah, but they're in the Big 12, and they're one of those. Honestly, they could go 10-2, or they could go 5-7 in the Big 12, and it's not going to shock me. They're just in that hodgepodge of middle of the road Big 12 team.
So Arizona gets this win. They're 3-0. They go to Iowa State. Now, this is a fork in the road. This is if you beat Iowa State on the road and you're Arizona, you go to 4-0. Okay, we'll now take you seriously. That's a statement. To your point, the rest of this, who knows? Who knows?
What I do know, Mark, is a good
Baylor and
transition.
Arizona State's better. What's that?
Is UCLA is not a good football team. I'm not sure if you're watching this game. New Mexico is absolutely dominating the soul out of UCLA. They've had multiple possessions where they've gone inside the 5-yard line of UCLA and they didn't pick up a fourth down, or they fumbled the football or something like that. It's only 21-10. It could be 35-10 realistically, Mark. Nico, I believe you having another bad game. He almost threw picks on back-to-back plays here. He's not doing well at all, which I like. I like to see it.
Yeah, it's a bit pathetic. I would say that so Deshaun Foster takes this job, and many of us, including myself, had serious questions about him being a head coach in the Big Ten after never even being a coordinator. And they looked awful to start the season. Then they played well the backstretch of the season, reasonably well, enough to compete with Rutgers and Nebraska and those kind of schools. And so I had some hope long-term, even though I thought their schedule was way too much for them this year, but they haven't even gotten to that part of the schedule. And so Deshaun Foster may be reaching the Luke Fickell level of hot seat, unless they just have no care for what they're doing at UCLA and just keep him on as head coach to save a couple bucks. Because otherwise, if this continues, and you would have to have a renaissance of a turnaround to go from losing to the New Mexicos of the world and UNLV to winning games in the Big Ten. Let's lift Deshaun Foster to the top rung of the hot seat list.
Yeah, and by the way, as you were talking, they turned it over inside their own 50-yard line on fourth down.
Wow.
They're going to lose this game, and it might get to 35-10, Mark. I'm not kidding you. UCLA looks like they have just completely given up. Or they don't know how to play football at all. Like, it's humiliating what's happening there.
That's pathetic. That is pathetic. Yeah.
What is UCLA schedule? Because I know you said earlier when I first called in, they are on 0-12 watch. How realistic is the 0-12 watch?
Here we go. Can you guys see this? Yeah. We've got 0-3 at Northwestern. Well, that's going to be the toilet bowl. At Northwest, who knows? So, but obviously they're on the road traveling across the country, so they'll be an underdog of some sort in that game. Penn State, they lose that game. Michigan State's a better team. Not that it's impossible that they could win at Michigan State, but they're going to be a substantial underdog. You know, Maryland at home, I think you mentioned that one earlier at the Rose Bowl, but that's not a home field advantage. So as long as Maryland travels well. And then after that, then the last five, the way they're playing, they're not only going to lose all those games, they're going to get blasted.
Yeah, what I'm worried about UCLA is if you lose this game, what is the chances you think they lose the locker room if they lose this game?
Well, if they don't lose the locker room, then Deshaun Foster is an exceptional leader of men. If he's not a exceptional football coach, he can relate to his players, and they have a high regard for him. Or they just have recruited, while not recruiting a great level of player, they've recruited very disciplined and very and players with character, because you got to think that they've got to be pretty disheartened, because these players know how good teams are and how bad teams are. And they look at New Mexico on their schedule and they got UCLA on their helmet. They know that they're supposed to win this game they were supposed to win by 16 points. And that's playing as horribly as they did. Last year they would have been more like a 25-point favorite.
Yeah. Do you think this is like, in terms of the bigger picture of college football, do you think this will make players think twice about entering the transfer portal?
Well, it should. Nico's situation is fairly rare. So I would differentiate, your question for the average college football player versus what we saw with Nico. That should certainly be a warning to other players in his situation. And I think I lined it up fairly clearly a few minutes ago with all the advantages he had in play where he was. That, like I say, if I would have had 5 minutes with Nico, I would have lined up, you're making more than 99+% of this employees in this country. Number 2, you're making more than almost every college football player in this country. Number 3, you don't want to hear this, but you're an average quarterback at best right now. So you should feel fortunate. You have a great football playing university where the school and the team is just cherished as a football brand, and you play in front of 100,000 people. You're not going to get that elsewhere. And you play for one of the best offensive minds in the sport, and he is going to groom you if you apply yourself for the NFL. But he thought he could make $4 million. So he's making a lot less, and he doesn't have all those advantages that he once had.
I got you. And I think this is going to hurt his draft stock tremendously, because they're not good on offense, and it's going to be perceived as Nico just was a Josh Heupel quarterback. And even if that's not true, that's going to be the way it's perceived going forward into the NFL. Well, he was only good because of Josh Heupel. Well, it was only good because he had Dylan Sampson and 3 unbelievable wide receivers at Tennessee. And then when he went somewhere where he's not going to be the most talented player on the field and he's not in the best of situations, he can't reach that level. And it's sad to see for anyone's career to go out in such a dramatic fizzle, but it is the way it is. Now, Mark, there are other games tomorrow that, we usually get that one big upset every single week. We haven't really had it this season, which I think this week is. What do you think about South Alabama over Auburn as a potential upset?
Well, you mentioned Tulane the last call, and South Alabama played them extremely well. I didn't watch the game, but based on the numbers and the score. So there is potential for that, just because we've seen under Hugh Freeze how susceptible Auburn is to, wasn't it last year they lost to New Mexico State, or was that the year before?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, they lost to New Mexico State. They lost to Cal, who only won one game 2-6 in the ACC. So, yeah, if you're looking for that shocker, if we go to the schedule and you run down point spreads here, then, we're looking at you're looking for a 2+ underdog, kind of 2+ touchdowns.
Yeah, and by the way, how the mighty have fallen. Washington State went from being a P4 program to being now underdogs to North Texas, Mark.
Whoa, yeah.
And substantial underdogs. They're 5.5-point dogs to North Texas.
So we've got, let's see what we can find here.
Yeah, there's no way Ohio's going to beat Ohio State, right?
That one came to no one. Ohio's not beating Ohio State. Ohio State last lost to a G5 team in the 1990 Liberty Bowl.
I understand that, but man, Mark, it would be, the amount of trolling the Michigan fans would give you if you actually lost to Ohio.
Sure.
That would be hilarious, just as an outsider fan's perspective.
Sure, of course it would be.
Yeah, I think the 28.5 from what I'm seeing is not even close to enough. I think Ohio State is just going to absolutely steamroll them because this is their first legitimate test of the season in terms of like cupcake level competition.
Yeah.
And they're going to want to prove a point.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. So what were we talking about? What game? It might have been you, whoever called tonight. We were looking at points. Oh, I think you were talking to South Carolina, Vandy, and something you said made me think of the Ohio State OU game. And because I did see that, I saw it I heard 34. I don't think that was ever on the board. I saw 31.5 as an opening line. And then I was surprised. I looked at it last night. I saw 28.5. And I'm like, who in the world's betting down Ohio University? I know they're dangerous. And if they were playing anybody else in the Big Ten, like if they were playing Illinois or somebody like that, I'd say, this team just beat West Virginia and they just took Rutgers to a 3-point game. They're a pretty good football team. But Ohio State, I think they are going, and this won't be because Ohio's just a horrible football team. It's going to be because Ohio State, I do believe that they will take them seriously and they will beat them down pretty bad.
Oh yeah, I absolutely do as well. And with Julian Salem looked elite in his previous matchup against Grambling, and I think a lot of that's going to carry over to this game against Ohio as well. Now, I don't think in terms of those games you've got matched up, in terms of who's the best team out of those that can pull off the upset, it's Wisconsin, but
yeah,
that's more telling about how bad those games are in terms of the team that's the underdog. Luke Fickell, that experiment spelling is just surprising to me. Like, it had every check mark you could possibly imagine when they hired it. I thought it was the best hire of that offseason, even over the Matt Rule Nebraska hire.
Yep.
It's looking like the worst hire out of all of them.
Yes.
I don't know. Do you think it was just the implementation of going from the air, like changing up to a spread offense so quickly and changing the philosophy? Like, why do you think this experiment has fallen so far and so quick? Because it's not like just the Big Ten going from adding Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA impacted them. They're struggling against MAC level teams.
So I think we have a few things coming into play. I think one is that, yes, Luke Fickell, this is surprising to me. I think he would be smarter than this, but based on all indications, he did take over Wisconsin thinking we're going to revamp the offense and make Wisconsin something that they're not. But then, as I recall going into last season, once he got into spring practice, or maybe before that, he realized once he saw these athletes on the field and workouts and so forth, okay, we can't do that. We don't have that type of athlete. So we're going to start to phase into that because that's eventually where I want to be. And so we're going to kind of, transition into that. I also think this is not his fault, that even if Paul Chryst would have stuck around, and of course, Paul Chryst posted Wisconsin kind of seasons, was going to Big Ten championship games, doing all that the program was already on a downturn. They hadn't recruited as well. I don't know what Paul Chryst's deal was, but by all indications from people that I trust that covered the team, that their recruiting was terrible. And Paul Chryst had let it slide to those levels. And then on top of that, they didn't get the kind of splash in the transfer portal that other teams did. They've really had no impact transfers, and certainly haven't gotten the quarterback. So there's your key piece. Name me a program and name me a coaching issue, and I'll show you a poor quarterback room or a bad quarterback decision. I'll point to you, Mike Norvell getting DJ Uiagalelei to try to continue what he was doing there. And no, why did you do that? And Hugh Freeze thinking that Peyton Thorne was going to win in the SEC, et cetera, et cetera. You can point to a bad quarterback decision. Well, with Luke Fickell, I don't know if it was a bad decision or just the inability to get a transfer quarterback who was any good.
Right, and to me that's surprising because they got Desmond Ritter at Cincinnati. Like, I understand he wasn't from the transfer portal, but it shows he's able to identify and produce talent out of Cincinnati. You think Wisconsin would have more resources and more advantage to be able to get better athletes.
Sure.
And you think he would have hit on one of the athletes by now at quarterback to get better, but their offense, if anything, looks worse than it did when they had Paul Chryst as their head coach.
Absolutely it does. Yeah,
and
Paul Chryst did a nice job there. But again, for whatever reason, he did poor in recruiting his last few years. Well, the most obvious, if we're going plus 14 possible underdog upsets tomorrow, it's South Florida at Miami.
No, I disagree with you. I think I found one even more likely.
All right.
Texas State over Arizona State.
Okay. Sure.
I think Texas State is a decent G5 program. They almost beat Arizona State last year. And Arizona State, I think, is getting a lot of value from people just because of what they did last year and are returning a lot of average football players who had an incredible run last year. I'm a little shaky about Kenny Dillingham as a coach because of what happened in Starkville last week. I just am. So, you get the ball to bounce your way one or two times. It wouldn't shock me, where they just fall again.
That game's 18.5. Okay. I'm going to tack one on here, and I should have no faith in Stanford. But do we remember, was that just last season or was that the year before? No, that was the year before they went to Colorado, and they were getting blown off the field, like 3 touchdowns down, and the shoot. Eliamore, the wide receiver with the funny name, had like 300 yards receiving. They come back, they win. Anyway, my point here is that this is not as much about Stanford as it is about Boston College not being a great team, traveling, playing late night at Stanford, 14.5 points. Just saying, Stanford, for as just incredibly lousy as they were last year, they beat Louisville at home.
That's true.
So there's one. And I also was going to point out, who was it?
Why I just noticed is, why is Utah going on the road to play Wyoming? Why?
I don't know. That does them no good.
I mean, why do teams, even P4, go on the road to play Steve Mac and what Conference USA teams and stuff like that, Mountain West? There's no benefit. You just look like an idiot if you lose, like West Virginia did. Or
Yes.
Missouri 2 years ago when they went to Massachusetts. There's literally no benefit in doing that. And by the way, Mark, I just want to point this out. Would it shock you that Nico Amalevu threw a pick since we've been having this conversation? Would that shock you?
Oh, that's funny. Wow.
Yeah, 28-10, by the way, Mark, is the new score.
28-10. They're getting blown out. That's crazy. Wow. You would just think it's UCLA that if we looked up their recruiting classes, they would be like 23, 27, whatever. in the country that those dudes could just. That's incompetent coaching, preparation. It's just wow. That's an embarrassment. That's one of the worst embarrassments we've seen recently.
Okay, and Michael in the chat's telling me they scheduled a home, Utah and Wyoming. Why Utah would agree to a home against Wyoming, of
Yeah,
all
there's
teams?
no reason to do that.
I don't get it.
Ohio State is one of the few schools I can think of that I cannot come up with the time that they've ever gone to a G5. Alabama, now this does make sense from a recruiting standpoint, and I'm guessing that's why they did it, went to South Florida a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and they almost lost that game too.
Yeah.
Which would have been embarrassing. That was Ty Simpson's first ever start, and it looked like the team gave up on him.
I guess there are some others. I don't know that I remember Auburn going anywhere. I know Miami's gone to Toledo. They've gone to App State. They had a game scheduled at Arkansas State that got wiped out because of weather or something.
Yeah, someone in the Big 12, I think, this week is headed to Arkansas State.
Yeah.
Yeah, Iowa State's headed to Arkansas State.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know what the advantage of doing that is. I don't know why you would do that. No idea.
You think they wanted a trip to Walmart?
It might have been the Walmart allure to see the home headquarters there. Because, otherwise, I would only do that if I could find some kind of recruiting angle. Like, again, I think Saban going to Tampa, I think that's why he did it.
Yeah, I mean, it made sense at the time, but if they lost that game, the embarrassment out of that would have been, man, these guys can't even beat the fifth best program in the state of Florida. Like, that was an embarrassment, that game. That was the only time I've seen a Nick Saban team absolutely give up at the University of Alabama, and that told me a lot. I wanted to ask you, Mark, about this game. That should be a good game. No one's talked about this entire time. Rivalry game 2, Pitt, West Virginia.
Yeah.
How come nobody's talked about this game the entire week?
Because they're no good. We don't know about Pitt, of course. They should have one of the, well, maybe I'm stretching it, one of the better defenses, maybe like a top 25 defense in the country. Pitt's got a really good, lot of future NFL players on defense. We saw what West Virginia did against Ohio last weekend. I believe they're about a 7 to 7.5 point underdog. Yeah. At home. But so this draws me in just from the rivalry standpoint. But Pitt's obviously a substantially better team, is determined by Vegas, but they haven't played anyone yet.
Yeah, I know. But this is one of those weird games where it feels like anything can happen in the backyard brawl. I mean, if you want to talk about what makes college football great, it's this game. Two teams who have absolutely no aspirations of making the playoffs or making a deep run in anything meaningful, but just because they love their teams and love their fan, have a passionate rivalry. This is the game that makes the sport great.
Yeah, Pitt's got, again, to try to make sense of an ACC schedule is kind of difficult. So I don't know. I guess they could make some noise. It's possible.
Yeah, it looks like 8-4, 7-5. I would have them underdogs to Louisville, Florida State, Miami, and Notre Dame right now for sure.
Yeah, at Georgia Tech.
Yeah, that's another one they're probably going to be dogs in.
Yes. All right, DeReal. Anything else?
No, I think that's all I got to talk to you about, Mark. Would it shock you if New Mexico's about to score another touchdown?
Wow, that's something else. Well, you called it 35-10.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, I guess I just know football, Mark. I mean, some people just are typer trolls and make fun of me, but they never call it. You notice how that works? People just make fun of you in the chat, but when you ask them to call in and debate, they never call in. How come that's the case?
Nothing. Don't know what to tell you there. I know that somebody would have been a rich individual betting New Mexico against the money line tonight.
Very true. Well, have a great rest of your show.
All right, Darrell. The money line in that game must have been phenomenal. We're probably talking about plus 550 or something. All right, let's welcome in our buddy Austin. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good, Mark. How about yourself? Lovely late
good.
Friday evening, early Saturday morning for us East Coaster. How goes it?
Yeah, 1:17 a.m. What's on your mind?
Notre Dame, Texas A&M tomorrow night. Arguably one of the biggest games of this slate. Is it too early to say that this might be a must-win for Notre Dame? Because if they start 0-2, Mark, and looking at what they have ahead in their schedule, is there any path where if they lose to Texas A&M tomorrow night that they can run the table and still have a good chance to make the playoffs at 10-2, losing two of their biggest resume builder games against Texas A&M and Miami?
Yeah, so we addressed this a few times tonight. So basically, yes, Notre Dame can lose this game and still make the playoff, but it puts them in a position where they're going to have to be scoreboard watching. So yeah, this is an extremely difficult and important game for Notre Dame.
Well, and that's the thing, too, that I find interesting, Mark, because the way that they schedule, I was listening to some of the calls, especially one with Darrell, where they were talking about Notre Dame not being in a conference and talking about the new playoff system and how they can earn a top 4 spot and earn a bye if it gets to that point. Do you think, Mark, going forward, that if Notre Dame, do you think that'll help ramp up their schedule a little more, meaning where they can get more leeway, so to speak, is what I'm asking.
Are they going to toughen up their schedule?
I mean, not toughen it up, like weaken it up. That way, do the
Weaken
Indiana
it.
approach. My bad.
Notre Dame? No.
Yes.
No. Why?
Because
the national championship game last year.
Well, the reason why I say this, Mark, is because they're on the verge of starting 0-2 and watching their playoff hopes.
Well, they're not on the verge. They haven't stepped on the field yet. They could go 0-2, sure. Yeah.
But don't you think it's important, Mark, looking at it, though? If I understand it's hard to project. I get where you're coming from. But a lot of people...
Austin, love your call. You love college football. I know that. But let me better explain myself.
Okay.
Notre Dame has certain principles when it comes to their approach to college football. And one is that they're going to stay with the framework that they have objectives about their recruiting and playing a national schedule. They think about things like that. They're not trying to doctor up the process to make the playoff. I have never seen that out of them. They used to play. Now, for younger fans, you may not recognize this because I know that this ACC schedule is going on 10 years at this point. This is the 11th year, I believe, of this ACC schedule. The first one, I think, was in 2015, and that's when their schedule started to go downhill, having to play Virginia and Duke and the rotation of those ACC teams. Because before that, if you ranked Notre Dame's schedule every year, it was one of the 3 or 4 toughest in college football. So this is just a byproduct of them signing a contract with the ACC. Now, keep in mind that they can only make it so much of an easy schedule because they signed a 13-year contract with Clemson.
I got you, Mark.
So they're playing that difficult game. They're always going to play USC, we hope. USC, Clemson, and it was also announced this offseason by the ACC that the Notre Dame rotation, which has been pretty even, is going to be heavy Florida State, Miami because of revenue. So Notre Dame's not looking to get out of playing tough games.
Oh, And yeah, that kind of helps me understand it just a little bit more. Maybe I took the wrong approach. Maybe what I meant by took the wrong approach on that. But I will say this though, Mark. With that though, like you said, do you think if they, as you said, they're not on the verge, they haven't stepped on the field yet, but if they were to lose tomorrow, does that make them question it at all?
Question what?
Their schedule processing, like you said, the contracts and everything.
No, they're not
I
going to
got you.
question anything. No, just because they're going to figure we weren't good enough to win the games. And
I got you, Mark. I got you.
yeah, their schedule's not that difficult. So why would they lighten it up even more?
Well, maybe I'm going at it the wrong way, Mark. Maybe it's harder for me to explain, so to speak.
I didn't do that, everyone. We just lost Austin there. I wanted to hear his next point. Although the bottom line is, regardless of any other points that he was going to bring up, is that Notre Dame is not dodging anyone. This is the byproduct of the contracts that they've set in place. They're playing the ACC 5 games a year. And like I just mentioned, they're even going to make that more difficult from the standpoint of Clemson's going to be a permanent opponent to some degree. And then they're going to weight that heavily toward Miami and Florida State in particular, because those are big revenue generating games. And then, take Stanford, for example. This is what happens when you're somebody like Notre Dame, and they are unique to college football in this way. They have determined at some point in history that Notre Dame and Stanford, they need to play. They want to play. They both want to play. They play every year. Well, what was Stanford 10 years ago? This is 2025. 10 years ago, Stanford was one of the best football teams in America. They were headed to play in the Rose Bowl and demolish Iowa, and they were one of the 4 or 5 best teams in college football, and had been for 6 or 7 years at that point, and were for the next couple years. Not to that degree, but they were a top 15 to 20 team. Well, Notre Dame just kept scheduling Stanford. Well, now that's looked at as, well, they schedule Stanford. That's an easy game. That's an easy schedule. Well, Notre Dame hasn't changed their approach. Stanford's changed. Florida State, when Notre Dame signed this contract with the ACC, Florida State had just won a national championship. And they were still really good in 2014, playoff team, 2015, 2016, won the Orange Bowl. Well, then they went off into the oblivion for 4 to 5 years. Well, they still were playing Notre Dame, and Notre Dame was playing Florida State. Miami. Notre Dame signs this contract. Miami at this point has only been awful for 10 years. When I say awful, I put that in quotes. Awful for Miami. 7-5 a lot. Well, they signed this contract for the ACC, and Notre Dame's thinking that they're going to be playing high-level games with Miami. Well, not so much. Miami's been 7-5 a lot for the last 10 years. So it's not Notre Dame trying to dodge anyone or get out of anything. They did get out of 3 excellent series that I enjoyed from Big Ten teams with Michigan, Michigan State, and Purdue. I would rather see them play those games than play Virginia and Duke and Boston. Well, Boston College, there's another one. Boston College has been a rivalry of Notre Dame. So look at Boston College and their ebb and flow through the years. Boston College has been Matt Ryan, Boston College. They have been Steve Adazio, Boston College. So, in USC, there's been Pete Carroll, USC. There's been, since then, USC's never been bad. They've ripped off a couple 5-7s, but basically they've just not been a national championship contender. Well, Notre Dame didn't control that. They still scheduled USC every year. USC turned from being one of the elites, maybe the best program in college football in the 2000s, to 20, 25. So Notre Dame's not done anything with their schedule, trying to dodge anything or make it easy on themselves. And I have taken plenty of shots at Notre Dame for other things, but not their scheduling in terms of an approach of dodging anyone. I don't like them playing this ACC schedule. Garrison, what's going on tonight?
Hey, Mark, how are you?
I'm doing well. What are you up to?
Oh man, well, honestly, got off work late today, and then I came home and heard my cat one of my cats struggling. I have 2 cats and a dog. I had to take them to the vet, but everything's fine now. A little tragic, but we're all good. But I was watching this UCLA game, and then I looked at their schedule, Mark, and I think there's a real chance that this team, if they don't beat Northwestern, they are in danger of going 0-12.
Yeah.
I was looking at it. I mean, I am somewhat surprised. No, for me, I personally called Nico. I am not a believer, but I didn't know it was gonna look this bad. What do you think the problem is there? Is there like a disconnect between him and the coaches, or?
Well, we've talked about this quite a bit tonight with this situation and this game unfolding the way it is.
$1.2 million.
I'm sorry, what's that?
$1.2 million New Mexico was paid.
Oh, to play this game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nico gambled and lost, and his father and whoever else handles him made a poor judgment and overvalued him in the market. So I'll say it one more time tonight that if I had 5 minutes with Nico before he made this decision, I would have sat him down and said, number one, you make $3 million a year. I think that was the number, something in that range. You make $3 million a year, you're making more money than 99.8% of Americans. Number two, you make $3 million and you make more than all but 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 players in college football, and you're not that good. You're not one of the 10 best players in college football, but you're making that much money. So what you should be doing is busting your tail to earn that money, not be thinking too highly of yourself. You were a quarterback who took a team to the playoffs, but mostly that was driven by Dylan Sampson at running back and James Pierce at defensive end and an excellent defense. And you were just kind of along for the ride as a game manager and a runner. And if you break down his statistics from last year, I would have said, Nico, look at your numbers. Let's face it. You bulked up your numbers against bad opponents, and against good opponents, you weren't very good. So you have a lot of growing up to do. You've got a lot of development to undergo. And why are you leaving one of the best football programs in the country and then assuming you're going to get picked up by another great football program? When you play in front of 100,000 people here, you're being paid more than all these other people I just mentioned, and you think you legitimately are going to fall into a better situation. And on top of all that, you play for one of the best offensive minds in the sport who can groom you if you apply yourself for the NFL. But no, he lands at UCLA, loses money, and he's in this and playing with inferior talent, and it's pretty obvious to see what's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself, Mark. Something else I want to bring your attention, of course. I wasn't sure if you talked about it this week at all, but did you see the article by Blake Topmeyer from USA Today about Ohio State?
I did not.
So Thursday on the call-in show, while waiting for callers to come in, I went over it, and
Yep.
the name of the article, and I'll put it in the chat for you. But it says Ohio State greed could disrupt Big Ten, spark a college football super league, and in there he goes to mention just oh, like the power Ohio State has in the Big Ten when it comes to media rights and things of that nature, of course. Talking about Ohio State possibly breaking off in the Big Ten, in which I just believe Ohio State would never do that because I don't think they're crazy enough to do so. But yeah, but I thought it was really funny that he gets deep into it about super leagues in the college football game. But I thought it was really funny how he laid it at the feet of Ohio State.
So I guess the one thing that I have to have answered is if they would make that kind of bold move, they would obviously have to have other teams join them to have a super league.
Correct. But he was saying that Ohio State, if they were to go independent or yeah, basically yes, if they were to go independent, then that would spark it all.
Oh, okay. So
Because
they would
typically-
transition to independent, waiting to put together a super league.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I understand that line of thinking. I do understand, like in the article, he also talked about Blake Topmeyer talked about how, like in games like say Ohio, he brought up Ohio State Purdue, and how Ohio State, I mean, they could ask to get a bigger percentage. And I gave the example of, if I bring my part of my business and someone else doesn't, but my business produce more, let's say 65 or 50, even 55% of the revenue we bring in, then I would want a bigger return, correct? So I can understand Ohio State doing that, but I just could never. Ohio State leading the Big Ten, it's never going to happen. I liken it back to a few years ago when Wolverine fans were talking about it, and I just said you guys would never do that. It isn't smart business because even Notre Dame, them getting to the national championship was worth 4 years of revenue, but how often do you think you can get there in a 4-year span?
Well, you bring up the revenue split, and I have for a long time, even before this became a major issue in college football the last few years, and especially with the ACC redistributing its money to favor the teams that bring in the TV revenue, is I've thought, so when Kevin Warren signed that new deal with CBS, NBC, and Fox, and so we've got each school in the Big Ten bringing in roughly $90 million a year in TV revenue. If you truly broke down the TV ratings and what networks air what games from what teams, like, you're throwing out 55% or 65%. Oh, it would be the difference between. So if you go 90 million per school in the Big Ten, and then if you truly reflected who's bringing the money in, I don't know what Ohio State's number would go to. It would be, Northwestern's number would go to 6 million, 8 million. It wouldn't be anything close to 90 million.
Yeah.
And Purdue, when they're bad, like they are now, when they're good, they would be have a reasonable share, but they've been terrible and nobody watches the games. So it would be a drastic, if it would truly reflected who brings the money in the TV ratings, it would be, maybe I should even do a video on that, because I did one in the ACC when all that was being talked about and how they were going to split it differently. So they went basically 40% gets split evenly and 60% gets split based on the TV ratings. And I broke down the last 2 years of TV ratings in the ACC and came up with a pay structure. And I showed it to a few people that would know, and they said, yeah, cut that fairly close. That's pretty good estimates. Oh, my word. If you did that in the Big Ten,
yeah,
Ohio State, Michigan, obviously, we know down the Penn State, then USC, etc. Oregon. Oh, the disparity in numbers would be like the ACC spread out quite a bit, but the Big Ten would just totally just if it was fair, if you consider that fair. So I think what's fair is to say something similar to what the ACC did. Let's take half the money and say, you know what? We're all in this together. We're all members of the Big Ten. We're all equal members. Take half of the money and say that gets split up evenly. But we cannot ignore that certain schools bring in the TV numbers and you lesser schools benefit from that. So we're going to take the other half of the money and it's going to be tied to the TV ratings. And we're going to split it up accordingly.
Well, Mark,
I've been surprised in this new era of college football revenue distribution that hasn't been a thing in the Big Ten, where Ohio State, especially them, number one, but also Michigan, wouldn't pound the table and say, seriously?
No, I'll tell you what. Stephen A. Smith, he probably said, I heard him say this maybe 5 or so years ago, and it was one of those quotes I've always stuck to because I think it makes a lot of sense. He said, "Fair is a place where they judge pigs."
Yeah.
In other words, fair. That's the only type of fair there is, and yeah, and I think that you can see that in recruiting. You can see that in NIL. I think that's what the sport is becoming. It's almost more like it's more likened to the MLB or like Major League Soccer, like MLS or EPL over in England, where of course if in the NFL, of course, most team structures are about the same, but in some other sports like soccer and baseball, you can overspend and get the team you need.
Sure. Well, I understand Stephen A's point. What he's basically saying is fair doesn't exist and equality doesn't exist because everybody brings something different to the table. Ohio State brings arguably more than anyone else. Iowa brings something in the middle, or Minnesota, and then Rutgers and Northwestern bring the least, and that's just the way it is. I think, if anything, the Big Ten and the way it's been structured this entire time, you could go back to the 1950s when TV started. That's obviously what exploded college football nationally and also exploded the revenue is being on TV is that it was very fair at the time to say, okay, Northwestern's never on TV, but they're going to get the same share as Ohio State. Look at, for years and years and years, and even to today, when bowl games were a big deal, when there wasn't as big a playoff, and Ohio State would go to the national championship game, and Michigan would go to the Rose Bowl, et cetera, and they'd come back and they'd split evenly with the Big Ten all that money. And Indiana's sitting there at 2-10, and they get their share. That's being more than fair. I think that's being ridiculous.
And it's honestly surprising when you look at Ohio State. I mean, based on, I know Matthew Miller and I have gone back and forth on this about basically who's the richest football program out there, of course, between Ohio State and Texas. But I mean, you think about Ohio State and what they are, whether they're one or two in terms of revenue as a football program. And then you have the University of Michigan, who, I mean, Mark, I'm from the state of Michigan, like I will always tell everybody, the University of Michigan is the most important public university in the United States. You have programs like that, and then you have Oregon, right, who's the Nike hub. I mean, they've been at since, was it Prefontaine that wore the first Nike shoe for track? So, no, I mean the USC's, the Penn States, even Michigan State, which, by the way, I'm actually very impressed by their offense right now. But I mean, Michigan State's a top 25 program in college football, and I think that maybe like the last I mean, if you go through a 3-game coaching switch in 5 years, I don't know how many programs can survive that. But yeah, I mean, the Big Ten, it's they swing a big bat. They do. And I mean, of course, Nick Saban has even talked about it now. So,
Well, the funny thing that was displayed to us about the Big Ten is I go back to the COVID year, because the entire landscape of college football was an interesting experiment to watch how all these conferences responded to the pandemic and what they were going to do. The SEC basically said, we're playing football. Now we're going to do everything we medically need to do to be as safe as possible, but we're playing football. So let's start with point number one. We're playing football. Now we're going to decide all the resources we have to put in play and all the safety guidelines and everything to make this happen. But we're not figuring out all the safety guidelines to figure out if they're going to be good enough to decide whether we're going to play football. We're going to play football. Now we're going to figure out this. The Pac-12 basically said, oh, this is way too crazy and out of control. We're not playing football. And then they finally, near the end of the year, scraped together like 4 games and played a ridiculous schedule that meant nothing.
mm-hmm.
The ACC and the Big 12 kind of followed the SEC's lead. And once the SEC said, this is what we're doing, they kind of fell in place to say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. We are going to play football. And then the Big 10 was somewhere in the middle. And I think it very much showed a very intriguing difference in what the institutions want, because they're very, dare I say, liberal in their thinking and very academic minded that, okay, we're going to do what's, even if this wasn't really truly on their minds, this is going to be our statement, is we're going to do what's best for the student athletes. And Kevin Warren made, whether it was his decision or not, it looked foolish for him to come out and say, we're not playing football this year. They actually made that statement, which was ridiculous. But then you saw this war that was unlike all the other conferences, because you had a very big divide between the academia, the chancellors, the institutions, the presidents that said, we're not playing football because this is a national emergency, versus the coaches, the players, the fans that said, hell yeah, we are playing football. So they went to war, and obviously they finally played football. So that was fascinating to watch that play out. And it gave us a big indication of how these conferences in these schools work. And that also came to mind because obviously there was talk about, it was never serious, but there was talk out there that Ohio State's playing football. They are playing football. And the Big Ten's not going to play football. They'll go play football without them. They don't need them.
Yeah, I remember that. There were a lot. I was one of the. In my mind at that time, I was like, "Listen, if we had to go play ACC or SEC teams, I'm okay. I'm okay with that."
Yeah, that would have been a statement to show. And I don't think, even though it didn't happen, anyone here watching or listening knows that I don't want Ohio State to leave the Big Ten. I love tradition. No. And if we start having schools like Ohio State leaving their conference and forming different leagues, and so many people are going to be turned off and say, wow, if we can't even keep Ohio State in the Big Ten, now what's happened to this sport?
Yeah.
So I don't want that in any way. The Big Ten is Ohio State and Michigan, and even the likes of Illinois and Indiana, and the schools that have been there forever. But the Big Ten almost not. Now the Big Ten would survive without Ohio State. It's still a great team, but it would take a huge hit. But Ohio State doesn't need the Big Ten.
No. Like Ohio State doesn't. Michigan doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's about 5 schools that could get away with that. And I think Ohio State and Michigan easily.
I'm sure Northwestern could join the Ivy League, you know?
Well, yeah, if you're talking about just surviving, but I'm talking about if you want to, like, still be making $1 zillion and everything, that sure, Iowa they got a big enough football program that they can go hook up with the Big 12. I'm sure the Big 12 would love to have Iowa.
Oh, they definitely would.
But
I think they'd do well.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, awesome talking to you, of course. Of course, everybody, if you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe here at The Voice of College Football. You can find myself on Mondays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. at Ohio State The Voice of College Football. Mark, you have a great rest of your show.
Thank you, Garrison. Got Garrison after the Buckeyes game on Saturday as well with a post game over on the Ohio State channel. So check out Garrison's work right there. We got Cano showing up to talk some college football.
How's it going, Mark?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. So what I want to talk about right now is actually the Big 12. So I know they had a pretty rough week last week, but specifically I want to talk about Kansas. And basically, I think Jalen Daniels is extremely underrated, and I think he's a chance to win the Heisman Trophy. I mean, if you look at the stats last week, he was 18 for 30, not very efficient, but he had 223 and 2 touchdowns. And even going, like, to the week before that, like, he's just putting up good numbers. And the Big 12 is, like, wide open right now. The only real contenders I see other than Kansas is maybe Utah and Texas Tech. Colorado, they're looking terrible. Kansas State, they're not looking too good. And the rest of the conference is, like, up in the air. And we saw it last year with Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy. And, like, he kind of proved that even, like, a player from the Big 12 has still a chance to win the Heisman Trophy. So I think that Kansas and Jalen Daniels, I think he's underrated to win the Heisman Trophy, in my opinion.
All right, let's pull up the numbers. I have not – well, let me correct that. I did watch Kansas last week. I watched the Missouri game.
Yep.
That was a heck of a game.
It was.
So I've always thought this, Cano, that there are 3 big factors into winning a Heisman Trophy. Number 1, the team winning. So that obviously helps. The likes of RG3 winning the Heisman Trophy at 9-3 are somewhat rare. Not totally rare, but it doesn't help. So competing for a national championship or lifting a team like a Kansas to maybe a Big 12 championship game that never goes to the Big 12 championship game would be enormous. Yeah. The winning helps, and obviously then people are watching the games late in the season. Number 2 are stats, just pure stats. A running back running for 1,800 yards and 25 touchdowns, a quarterback who's got 45 TD passes and only 6 picks. Jaden Daniels, LSU statistics. Joe Burrow throwing 60 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So numbers, people are looking at the numbers, obviously. And then thirdly would be, did this guy do something crazy this year? Either a jaw-dropping play or 2 or 3, or like if Jalen Daniels can get Kansas into the Big 12 championship game and it's the last game of the season and they're down 4 and he takes Kansas on a 90-yard drive to win the game with 3 seconds on the clock, throws the game-winning touchdown, and that sends Kansas to its first Big 12 championship game. Those sorts of moments.
Yeah.
Put those 3 together and you get a Heisman Trophy, or you get really heavy on one or the other. Like Travis Hunter had the stats. Travis Hunter had obviously the highlight plays. And then he also, even though they didn't get anywhere special, they were coming off 4-8. So to get to 9-3 was a big deal. So Jalen Daniels, and like you say, we just saw a Big 12 winner of the Heisman Trophy.
Mm-hmm. Like, just for interest, do you know, like, off the top of your head, like, who's the Heisman frontrunners right now? Because I know Cade Klubnik kind of fell off. Garrett Nussmeier's not playing too well. Do you know like who's the favorite right now?
So, and Arch Manning obviously fell off.
Yeah, he did for sure.
I thought I did. I'm not a big Heisman Trophy, although I can name them all into the 1950s, but I'm not a like keeping up with the Heisman Trophy odds kind of guy.
Yeah,
Garrett Nussmeier didn't have a great stats in week 1, but he obviously
he
notched
did
the
win.
win against Clemson,
Mm-hmm.
and he was a top 3 or 4 guy the first going into the season. Julian Sand's going to start to get a little bit of a run if he has, let's say, a big game against Washington when the Buckeyes open their Big Ten schedule on the road. Drew Aller still hasn't, his season's basically a 0 right now. It doesn't matter when he starts playing some actual competition, but I'm trying to, Carson Beck had a nice night. His first, wasn't anything amazing, but he notched a big win against Notre Dame. From a running back standpoint, I can't really think of anyone who's going crazy.
If Jeremiah Love would have gotten more touches, I think if Notre Dame just uses him, period, at all, like even a little bit more, I think he would have a pretty good chance of winning it because he's, in my opinion, the best running back in college football, but they're just not using him. They're not using him enough.
Yeah, so his first marquee game, he did not have a good game. Not his fault, but the blocking wasn't there, and he only had like 35 yards in that game against Miami.
Yeah.
So this is a big week for him against Texas A&M, prime time.
Which I think Texas A&M is going to pull up the upset and win that game, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
And that's my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, so Jalen Daniels, we see right there. Did I hit the right buttons to get his numbers on the screen? I guess not. I pulled all that up for nothing. There we go. 9 touchdowns and 2 picks. 72%. So good numbers to start, and they're 3-0.
I think if he keeps up the stats and he can find a way to lead Kansas in like a wide open Big 12, if he finds a way to bring them into the Big 12 championship game and maybe even lead them to the CFP, I think he has a really good shot of winning the Heisman for sure.
I got 2 more names for you, and we appreciate Nolan throwing this one out there with Thomas Castellanos of Florida State. Obviously had a big game against Bama, and they're going to be an easy – they got a nothing game against Kent State next week. Then they go to Virginia to open the ACC. So they should be 4-0 when I think the Miami game's next. So his big games are going to be Miami, of course, coming up, and Florida at the end of the year. And if they compete heavily in the ACC. And then I got another one for you with John Mateer showing up against Michigan. So there might be something with John Mateer. Lenoris Sellers, obviously, he's got a big game against Vandy, pretty big game. He's already been on national TV against Virginia Tech. Didn't have a great game. It was okay. But he'll have plenty of opportunities. All right, sir. Anything else?
One more thought.
Sure.
This may be a little bit off topic. I don't know if you follow the NFL that much, but as a Bengals fan, what do you think are our odds to win a Super Bowl this year?
Oh, yeah, that was the question they asked me like 10 years ago. Like I was a huge NFL guy for all my life, but I have no idea. I just know that you won your first opener in forever in beating the Browns, and they seem to pretty much gift that one. And I know that, Zach Taylor needs to figure out what the issue is with getting his teams off the slow starts, I guess.
Yep, for sure.
I can't give you an educated guess on that.
All right. Well, thank you for having me on, Mark.
Sure.
And
thanks for calling, man.
Go Buckeyes. Thank you.
There we go. Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. Let's take our last call. We got Kai dropping by. Kai, good to see you.
Hey, Mark. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. What's on your mind?
So, my question was, I know you normally don't give up or give out your picks, but what would you say would be like the results tomorrow that would be like most surprising to you?
Most surprising that are reasonable, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think Ohio's going to beat Ohio State or whatever.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So you're looking for possible upsets.
Yes.
The most probable upsets. Let me pull up our schedule here. I think there we go. All right. Here we go. Do you consider Clemson, Georgia Tech an upset?
What's the line on that game?
It's only like 3.
I mean, I would consider that an upset. Yeah.
Okay. From a brand name standpoint, I don't think people are thinking about Georgia Tech winning this game, but yeah, they're only a 3-point underdog. That's a very possible upset right there.
For sure.
I don't give Wisconsin much of a chance at Alabama, but if Alabama plays like they did against Florida State, and Wisconsin was lost in their first 2 games that everyone's saying they're playing so horrible, and I get that, is they've basically given nothing up on defense. So we'll see how good the Wisconsin defense is, but that would be an upset. That's, obviously that's a 21-point spread.
Yeah. I think that a potential spoiler could be Oklahoma goes to Temple, and I know Temple isn't really a high brand team, but normally you don't see the SEC teams go on the road to play a small team, which I thought was pretty interesting. How that that they're playing at Temple, and Oklahoma just came off a big win against Michigan, and I believe they play Auburn next week, so it could be like a kind of a trap game, sort of.
Sure.
So do you think that Temple has the chance of potentially giving Oklahoma a real good game?
So you held short of the upset. I cannot
think it's going to be
ways.
close, but I'm not entirely.
You think it's going to be
confident
close?
in Temple.
What do you mean by close?
Like a 1-possession game.
Really? Okay, that would be fun. That would be fun to be tracking at 3 p.m. tomorrow. That Oklahoma's only up, 20-16 against Temple. I tend to lean your way, not to that extreme. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 3 or 6 point game at halftime and then Oklahoma beats them by 20.
That's a big possibility, yeah.
I think it might be something like that, kind of a lazy noon start for Oklahoma. That's an 11 a.m. start. So, yeah, I get your point there. I'm trying to think what's Temple done this year. They beat UMass 42-10. They beat Howard 55-7. So
they've looked pretty good so far.
I was just going to say you wouldn't think that tells us much, but Temple's usually not winning by those kind of scores.
Yeah.
Again, Auburn at home against South Alabama, 24 point favorite.
That could be another one, kind of a trap game.
Don't be too shocked there. Oh, wow. Texas Tech is a 23.5 point favorite at home against Oregon State. Huh. Didn't think it would be quite that heavy. If you believe in lazy starts at noon, well, that's a 3:30 Eastern for USC. But anyway, USC's a 3-touchdown favorite at Purdue. West Virginia's at home against Pitt, touchdown underdog. Of course, South Florida just did it last week against Florida. It's pretty much the same spread against Miami, but I think that should have awakened Miami.
Yeah, I don't think that's really a trap game for Miami anymore.
No, but it would be a substantial upset.
Yeah. I think Arkansas might cause some trouble for Ole Miss.
Yep. Yeah, I think Arkansas, I know they can win the game, but I think Florida can go to Death Valley and win.
Yep.
I don't think LSU is a great team that they can't be beaten. Again, Texas A&M is almost a touchdown dog at Notre Dame, and like you say, that could happen. If you want to consider Vandy an upset at South Carolina.
All right. I think that's all I really have to say.
There we go. All right, man. Thanks for being
Thank
here. All right, folks, we appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. I think that about does it for me and for all of you as well. Thanks for being here. And thank you for the generous contributions, everyone. I will do my best to do my typical 2 games at noon, 2 at 3:30, 2 prime time, 6 instant analysis. The issue that I have is when I had cable and the DVR going, is I would do the 2 games at noon, and then my instant analysis, my records, edits would overlap the 3:30, and it would be about halftime of the 3:30 games, and then I would just rewind to the start, and then I could blow through the commercials and kind of catch up and then do the same thing at 7. But Hulu doesn't let you do that. So on certain games they did, other games they didn't. So I couldn't go back for the 3:30 games and watch the entire games to do the analysis. Well, thank you, MCats. MCats has been awfully kind with the comments tonight. We appreciate that. We appreciate that so much. Yeah, this is fun. We're talking college football. We're in season. This is what we look forward to all year. And I would have to admit at this point, I'm a little beaten down from the day, but we gave it a good go for 3.5 hours almost. And we'll be back here after the primetime games. So after Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and whatever other key primetime games we have, which would be, I'll be watching Notre Dame and Texas A&M. And then my second game is going to be South Carolina, Vandy, it appears. Yeah. Those are my games of choice in primetime. So after those 2 are over, you will see me right here. We'll talk about the day in college football, and we'll see you then. Have a great Saturday of college football.